If you're ready to rest, you're in the right place. Close your eyes, relax your body, and drift into a slower time. You can also let us know in the comments where in the world you currently are and what time it is for you. Somewhere in the misty glens of ancient Europe, a group of people emerged who would go down in history as either mystical sages or, well, just really good at throwing parties in the woods. These were the Druids, and around 1200 BCE they began their hazy journey into cultural lore. If the Druids were a rock band, they'd probably be the Rolling Stones, legendary, a bit misunderstood, and still selling out arenas centuries later thanks to their enigmatic allure. Now, before you start picturing caped wizards with wands, let's get one thing straight. The Druids weren't just about hocus-pocus and moonlit rituals. Sure, they had a knack for the dramatic, but their origins were grounded in the earthy realities of their time. Spanning across what we now call the British Isles and parts of Gaul, that's ancient France for those not up on their old-school geography, these guys were a cultural force to be reckoned with. They didn't just pop up overnight either. The Druidic roots spread as far back as the Bronze Age, where they started as an elite professional class. Think of them as the ancient world's answer to LinkedIn influencers, minus the annoying motivational posts. But why does everyone seem to want a piece of the Druid pie? Well, they wielded a type of influence that was as wide as it was deep. Socially, they were the go-to folks for everything from legal advice to spiritual guidance. Need to settle a land dispute? Call a Druid. Want to know if it's a good year to plant your barley? Druid. Looking to organize a human sacrifice to ensure a plentiful harvest? Yep, Druids again. It's no wonder their reputation was cloaked in a mix of reverence and fear. Speaking of sacrifices, let's address the elephant, or perhaps the sacrificial bull, in the room. There's this persistent myth that Druids were basically ancient magicians, wielding powers that rival Harry Potter's. In reality, their magic was more about the power of influence than supernatural forces. The Roman historian Tacitus, writing in the 1st century CE, described them as having an unholy devotion to sacrificing captives. But let's remember, the Romans weren't exactly unbiased Yelp reviewers. They wanted to paint the Druids as barbarians to justify their own imperial conquests. So, what did the Druids actually do? For starters, they were the academics of their day, minus the expense of student loans. They memorized reams of knowledge, from the cutting-edge science of the time to the intricate oral traditions that kept their culture alive. They were also astronomers, tracking the cosmos with a level of precision that would make NASA nod in approval. And let's not forget their role as mediators and judges. Imagine being able to settle a dispute not just with legal expertise, but with the added flair of a ceremonial gathering. It's like Judge Judy meets Burning Man. Geographically, the Druids' reach was impressive. They were most famously associated with the British Isles, particularly Ireland and Wales, but their influence extended into continental Europe, especially in Gaul. Julius Caesar, in his commentary to Bello Gallico, noted that the Gauls held the Druids in high regard, often sending their young men to Britain to study the Druidic arts. This cross-channel exchange was the ancient equivalent of studying abroad, only instead of earning a degree in business, you got a lifetime of spiritual enlightenment and maybe a few tree-hugging tips. Now, about those supposed magical powers. While it's tempting to imagine Druids waving their hands and turning enemies into frogs, their true magic lay in their command over nature and human psychology. They understood the natural world deeply, using this knowledge to impress and influence others. They could predict the change of seasons with alarming accuracy, which in a time before weather apps was nothing short of miraculous. Yet it's this blend of science and spirituality that fueled the myths. The Romans, who had a flair for drama themselves, often exaggerated Druidic practices to paint them as pagan threats. But let's be honest, if you're trying to conquer a land, it's easier to vilify the locals as cultish sorcerers than admit they might just have a superior understanding of the world. In the end, the real power of the Druids wasn't in casting spells or concocting potions. It was in shaping the social and spiritual fabric of their communities. They were the keepers of knowledge, the arbiters of justice, and the spiritual guides of their people. Their rituals, while mysterious, were grounded in the practical realities of life and survival. So, while the myths may be captivating, the reality of the Druids is no less fascinating, a testament to the enduring human quest for understanding and control over the world around us. And now, let's slide into the meat, pun intended, of Druidic ritual life, where legend and history do a complicated tango. We're talking about their infamous ceremonies, including the ever-controversial human sacrifices. Human sacrifice, the ancient world's favourite cocktail party conversation starter. But before you imagine Druids as a bunch of bloodthirsty cultists, let's sift through the archaeological evidence and Roman accounts to separate the fact from the fiction. First things first, let's address the elephant in the Stonehenge. Roman writers like Julius Caesar had a knack for embellishing tales of Druidic practices. Caesar claimed that the Druids performed human sacrifices by burning people alive in giant wicker men. Yes, you heard that right, wicker men. It's like the world's worst arts and crafts project meets a horror movie. But hold your horses, or chariots, because the reliability of these accounts is shakier than a toga in a windstorm. The Romans, ever the drama queens, had political motivations to depict the Druids as barbaric. Imagine you're trying to justify conquering a bunch of territories. It's a lot easier to sell the folks back home on the idea if you paint the locals as wild-eyed pagans who need a good, old-fashioned civilizing. Plus, portraying Druids as savage mystics helped Rome boost its own image as the bastion of order and civilization. So, take those hair-raising tales with a pinch of ancient salt, because the Romans were known to stretch the truth like a lycra toga. Now, what does the archaeological record say? Spoiler alert, not much. Evidence of human sacrifice is tantalizingly scarce. Sure, some burial sites suggest ritualistic elements, like bodies buried in odd positions or with certain artifacts, but that's hardly a smoking gun or flaming wicker statue. In fact, many of the so-called sacrificial remains could easily be explained by other means, like executions or even warfare casualties. And while human sacrifice might have occurred occasionally, it was likely rare and highly ritualized, not your everyday Druidic pastime. But let's not completely exonerate the Druids. There are hints they engaged in ritual sacrifices, just maybe not the Hollywood version. Animal sacrifices were certainly part of their spiritual toolkit. Sheep, cattle, and even birds got their moment as offerings. It was a bit like bringing a casserole to the gods. These sacrifices were probably meant to appease deities, ensure good harvests, or gain favor in battle. Think of it as the ultimate form of ancient negotiation. Here, take this sheep, and please don't send a drought our way, thanks. Now, why all the fuss about sacrifices in the first place? Economically speaking, rituals were a way to redistribute resources. Sacrificing livestock wasn't just a spiritual act, it also reinforced social bonds and hierarchies. The Druids, as spiritual leaders, were at the center of these communal gatherings, which helped cement their status and influence. It was the ultimate power move. If they could control life and death, they could definitely control political narratives. Speaking of power, let's get into the economics of Druidic practices. Rituals weren't just spiritual, they were also economic events. They required resources, manpower, and time, things that only a prosperous society could afford to expend. And since the Druids were smack dab in the middle of these ceremonies, they wielded considerable sway over local economies. Need a blessing for your crops? Better make sure the Druids are on your side, or your barley might just wither on the vine. So, while the Romans loved to demonize the Druids as savage sorcerers, the reality was more nuanced. The Druids were strategic about wielding their influence, and rituals were one of their primary tools. They navigated a complex web of social, spiritual, and economic factors, maintaining their elite status by blending the mystical with the practical. It was less about casting spells and more about casting long-lasting influence over the communities they served. In the end, the Druids were masterful at using ritual to reinforce their authority and maintain social order. Their ceremonies were less about appeasing angry gods and more about managing human relationships and resources. They were like the ancient world's PR wizards, ensuring that everyone from peasants to chieftains knew exactly who held the power. This nuanced understanding of the Druids' rituals and sacrifices shows why they remain such an enduring topic of fascination. They were complex figures operating in a complex world, balancing the mystical and the mundane with a deftness that would make any modern politician envious. And as we peel back the layers of myth and reality, we find a story that is both more grounded and more intriguing than the legends suggest. So, As we leave the bloody altar of history behind, let's not forget that the true legacy of the Druids lies not in their supposed savagery, but in their sophisticated understanding of the world around them. They were a people who knew how to blend the spiritual with the practical, creating a legacy that has captured imaginations for centuries. Stay tuned, because there's more to this tale of ancient intrigue and power plays that will unravel in the chapters to come. While the Druids were undoubtedly skilled at turning rituals into community power plays, their true connection to nature wasn't just a ruse for social dominance. In fact, these guys were the original eco-warriors, minus the hemp shirts and solar panels. Now let's be clear, we're not talking about a bunch of tree-hugging saints. The Druids' environmental practices were less about saving the planet and more about ensuring their own survival. Still, they left a legacy that even today's green movements could learn a thing or two from. First, let's dive into their astronomical prowess. You might think that without telescopes or Google Sky, the Druids would be clueless about celestial happenings. But these folks were stargazers of the highest order. They understood the cycles of the moon and the sun with an accuracy that would make your smartphone's weather app blush. Their knowledge of the cosmos wasn't just a party trick either. It was essential for agriculture, navigation, and, yes, those famous rituals. The Druids used sites like Stonehenge not as mere ceremonial backdrops, but as complex astronomical calendars. Stonehenge, for example, is aligned with the summer solstice sunrise and the winter solstice sunset. Imagine the kind of dedication it took to lug those massive stones around just to make sure you knew when to plant your barley. And speaking of all things green, the Druids were quite the botanists. They knew their flora and fauna like a modern-day herbalist knows their essential oils. Oak trees in particular were sacred, a symbol of strength and endurance. The mistletoe, growing high in these oaks, was considered magical, likely because getting it down without a ladder required a prayer or two. But don't let the romantic image of a druid gently harvesting plants under moonlight fool you. This was practical knowledge. The Druids understood that the right plants could heal, harm, or help you have a psychedelic vision. They were the ancient pharmacists, knowing which roots to brew for a headache or which berries to avoid unless a trip to the underworld was on your agenda. Now, let's talk about their green lifestyle. Today, the idea of living in harmony with nature is all the rage. But the Druids weren't exactly composting their leftovers and riding bicycles. Their version of sustainability was less about eco-friendly choices and more about survival. They lived in societies that couldn't afford to waste resources. Every tree, stone, and stream had a purpose. Their environmental practices were born out of necessity, not a trendy lifestyle choice. Imagine trying to convince a Druid that you pay extra for organic produce when they were simply trying to avoid famine. The irony would probably make them laugh so hard they'd spill their mead. And let's not forget their architectural achievements. Druidic sites like Newgrange in Ireland, built around 3200 BCE, predate even the pyramids of Giza. This massive tomb is aligned so precisely with the winter solstice sunrise that a beam of sunlight illuminates its central chamber for just 17 minutes, a feat of engineering that would make Da Vinci nod in respect. It highlights their profound understanding of the natural world and its cycles, a connection that was both spiritual and practical. These structures weren't just places to gather and chant, they were the ancient world's version of a multi-tool observatories, calendars, and ceremonial sites all rolled into one. But let's not get too misty-eyed about the Druids' nature-loving ways. While they certainly had a deep respect for the environment, they weren't above exploiting it for their own ends. Their rituals often involved cutting down trees for fires or altering landscapes to build their stone circles. And while they revered nature, they also feared it. The wilderness was a place of mystery and danger, not a scenic backdrop for a weekend hike. Their reverence was as much about appeasing the potentially wrathful elements as it was about admiration. In modern terms, the Druids were the original pragmatists. They understood that nature was both a source of life and a potential harbinger of death. Their practices were a balancing act, using the natural world to sustain their communities while ensuring that they didn't anger the gods that supposedly controlled it. This is a far cry from today's image of eco-warriors, but perhaps it's a more honest reflection of the human-nature relationship. After all, even now, we're still trying to find that sweet spot between usage and conservation. As we look at the Druids' legacy, it's easy to romanticize their connection with nature. But let's remember that their practices were shaped by the harsh realities of their world. They didn't have the luxury of taking nature for granted. Every decision was a calculated risk, every ritual a negotiation with the environment that sustained them. So while the romantic image of Druids as mystical guardians of the forest is appealing, the truth is that they were much like us, trying to make sense of a world that was as unpredictable as it was awe-inspiring. In the end, the Druids remind us that while our tools and technologies have changed, the fundamental challenges of living in harmony with the natural world remain the same. They were the early astronomers, botanists, and engineers, using their knowledge to navigate the complexities of their environment. And while we may not be building stone circles or harvesting mistletoe with quite the same fervour, the quest for balance between human need and environmental harmony continues. The Druids' story, much like the ancient stones they left behind, is a testament to the enduring struggle and fascination with the world around us. So, as we stand on the shoulders of these ancient giants of green thinking, let's keep our eyes on the stars and our feet firmly planted on the earth, a lesson the Druids would likely approve of. Stay tuned, because the next chapter of this ancient saga promises to delve deeper into their social structures and how they managed to maintain such a grip on their societies. Who knew ancient history could be such a thrilling roller coaster of intrigue, power, and eco-savvy insights? As the curtain rises on the political stage of ancient Celtic societies, the Druids emerged not just as spiritual guides, but as formidable power players. Forget about Merlin and his wizard hat. Think more along the lines of a shrewd political advisor, whispering in the ears of tribal chieftains and subtly steering the ship of state. Picture them as the ancient world's equivalent of those behind-the-scenes operators who make politicians look good, minus the cable news appearances and Twitter feuds. In the intricate web of Celtic tribes, the Druids were the intellectual elite, wielding influence like a deftly handled sword. They held sway over a range of matters, from legal disputes to religious ceremonies, and even military strategies. Their political clout was as complex as the Celtic knotwork they so adored. Let's dissect this tapestry of power and see how they managed to weave themselves into the very fabric of society. To start, let's talk about their relationship with tribal chieftains. The Druids were the advisors you wanted by your side if you were a chief with aspirations. They weren't just there to sprinkle a bit of holy water on your plans, they were active participants in governance. Need to rally the troops for a skirmish with a neighbouring tribe? Better have a Druid on board to bless the endeavour and ensure the gods were in your corner. Their stamp of approval was the ancient equivalent of a blue check mark on social media instant credibility. These spiritual strategists were also the Celtic world's peacekeepers. Imagine them as the United Nations, but with a penchant for oak groves and mistletoe. When tribal tensions flared, and let's face it, they often did, the Druids stepped in to mediate. Their reputation for fairness and wisdom meant that their word carried weight. They were the ultimate arbitrators, using their understanding of human nature and the divine to broker peace deals. Not too shabby for a bunch of folks often portrayed as mystical hermits. But the real genius of the Druids lay in their ability to maintain neutrality. They were the Switzerland of their time, navigating tribal politics with the finesse of a cat on a hot tin roof. By staying above the fray, they ensured their survival and continued influence no matter which chieftain was in power. It's easy to see why they were so revered and feared. The ability to sway the minds of leaders is a skill as valuable now as it was back in the days of iron swords and wooden shields. However, the Druids' golden age of influence was about to hit a Roman-shaped iceberg. Enter Julius Caesar, the man with a plan and a serious case of wanderlust. As the Roman Empire expanded into Gaul around 5850 BCE, the Druids found themselves staring down the barrel of a cultural clash. Rome was not in the business of sharing power, especially not with a group they saw as pagan mystics. The Romans were the original spin doctors, and they didn't hesitate to depict the Druids as barbaric sorcerers. This wasn't just a PR move, it was a calculated strategy to undermine their influence. The Roman invasion rocked the Druidic world, shifting the tectonic plates of power. With their penchant for organization and efficiency and a healthy dose of military might, the Romans set about dismantling the existing social order. Temples were destroyed, sacred sites desecrated, and Druids were hunted down like witches in a medieval village. The Romans were the original cancel culture, and the Druids were on the wrong side of history. Despite this onslaught, the Druids were not so easily erased. Their knowledge was too valuable, their influence too ingrained. Some Druids adapted, transitioning from spiritual leaders to something more akin to underground resistance fighters. They became the custodians of Celtic culture, preserving traditions and knowledge in secret while the Romans strutted about with their togas and aqueducts. It was a quieter form of rebellion, but a rebellion nonetheless. Economically, the Roman conquest was a double-edged sword for Celtic societies. On one hand, Roman infrastructure and trade networks brought prosperity. On the other, the imposition of Roman taxes and legal systems eroded traditional ways of life. The Druids, who had once been the architects of economic and spiritual order, found themselves edged out by Roman administrators and their scrolls of red tape. It was like being replaced by a bureaucrat with a calculator, where once there was a sage with a staff. Yet, even in decline, the Druids left an indelible mark on Celtic society. Their legacy was one of resilience and adaptation. They taught their followers to navigate the stormy seas of change, to hold on to their identity even as the world shifted around them. The Romans may have built the roads, but the Druids laid the foundations of cultural memory that would endure long after the last Roman legionary had packed up his sandals and marched home. So, where does this leave us in the grand tapestry of history? The Druids were more than just the mystical figures of legend. They were political advisors, peacekeepers, and cultural custodians. They understood the art of influence long before the first political spin doctor ever donned a suit. Their story is a reminder that true power often lies not in holding the reins, but in guiding the hand that does. As we leave this chapter of Druidic history, let's not forget the lessons they imparted. In a world where the only constant is change, their ability to adapt and endure is a legacy worth remembering. But hold on to your mistletoe, because we've still got another chapter to unravel. The story of the Druids is far from over, and the next part promises to delve even deeper into the myths and realities of these enigmatic figures. Stay tuned, because the ancient world still has a few more secrets up its sleeve. And just like that, the Druids were on their way to becoming the stuff of legend, their influence dimmed, but not entirely snuffed out by the relentless march of Roman sandals across the British Isles. It's a tale as old as time. Conquerors arrive with their roads and aqueducts, and the old ways are swept under the proverbial Roman rug. But the Druids, being the crafty sorts they were, refused to simply fade into the misty hills from whence they came. As the Roman grip tightened, the Druids found themselves in a bit of a pickle. Their sacred groves were now seen as prime real estate for Roman villas, and their ceremonies were regarded as quaint relics by the toga-wearing newcomers. Yet, like a stubborn weed in a well-manicured garden, the Druidic traditions found ways to survive, morphing and adapting to the new order. They became the custodians of Celtic culture, preserving their lore and knowledge in secretive circles, much like an underground book club with a penchant for mistletoe. Fast forward a few centuries, and the Romans, much like a bad houseguest, finally packed up and left around 410 CE, leaving the British Isles to fend for themselves. This vacuum of power allowed for a brief resurgence of Celtic traditions, but the Druids never fully regained their former glory. Instead, they entered the realm of folklore, their stories whispered around fires and their images etched into the collective memory of the people. Now, let's time travel to the 19th century, cue the Victorian era, a time when corsets were tight, morals were tighter, and the imagination ran wild with tales of mystical lands and ancient wisdom. The Victorians, ever the romantics, took a particular shine to the Druids. They were portrayed as noble sages, wise beyond their years, with a direct line to nature's secrets. This was the age of the Gothic novel, the grand tour, and a burgeoning interest in archaeology and ancient cultures. The Druids, with their enigmatic aura, fit perfectly into this narrative, becoming a symbol of a lost golden age. But hold your horses, because the truth was far less glamorous. The Victorian depiction of Druids was about as accurate as a Hollywood portrayal of historical events, heavy on the drama, light on the facts. These romanticized versions often ignored the pragmatic realities of Druidic life, opting instead for flowing robes and mystical rituals. It was a classic case of style over substance, but hey, who doesn't love a good story? The 20th century saw yet another reincarnation of the Druidic image, this time courtesy of the New Age movement. As people sought spiritual alternatives to organized religion, The Druids once again became fashionable. They were seen as the original eco-warriors, champions of a harmonious relationship with nature. This modern reinterpretation conveniently glossed over the less savoury aspects of their history, such as those pesky human sacrifices. Instead, the focus was on their astronomical knowledge and their reverence for the natural world. And here we are today, with the Druids firmly entrenched in the public consciousness as symbols of mystery and ancient wisdom. Stonehenge becomes a gathering point for modern-day Druids during the solstices, a nod to their enduring legacy. But let's not kid ourselves. Today's Druid gatherings are more about community and celebration than any ancient rites. The Druids of old wouldn't recognize these gatherings, but they might appreciate the spirit of adaptation and survival. So, what does this all mean for the legacy of the Druids? Well, if history has taught us anything, it's that myth and reality often dance a complicated tango. The Druids were neither the pure sages of Victorian fantasy nor the sinister sorcerers painted by the Romans. They were a complex society navigating a world of shifting powers and changing landscapes, much like us today. Their legacy is a blend of fact and fiction, a testament to the human penchant for storytelling and the need to find meaning in the past. In the end, the Druids remind us that history is not just a series of dates and events, but a tapestry woven from the threads of human experience, both real and imagined. Their story is one of resilience and reinvention, an enduring symbol of the human spirit's ability to adapt and endure. So the next time you find yourself pondering the mysteries of Stonehenge or the secrets of the ancient world, remember the Druids, a people who, in their way, mastered the art of surviving change and left a legacy that still captures our imagination today. In the days before Netflix, Hulu, or even a dusty old TV set, Indigenous American communities had their own version of a binge-worthy series, oral histories. These weren't just stories. They were dynamic, living narratives that doubled as education, entertainment, and cultural glue. Imagine these tales as the original Breaking Bad, with just as many twists, moral lessons, and maybe a few more coyotes. Now, don't get it twisted. This wasn't just a game of telephone. Storytelling was an art form, and the storytellers were the rock stars of their communities. They were the human USB drives, carrying centuries of wisdom, history, and sometimes downright juicy gossip in their noggins. These folks were the keepers of knowledge, the ones who could spin a yarn so compelling that even the most restless child would sit in rapt attention rather than fidgeting with a fidget spinner. Let's face it, in a world without screens, the storyteller was king. But let's pause for a second and tackle a common myth, the romantic notion that Indigenous oral histories were merely quaint fireside tales. While the mental image of sitting around a campfire under a starry sky sounds lovely, the reality was far more complex and critical. These stories were a formidable tool for cultural transmission, preserving everything from the migratory patterns of buffalo to the intricacies of tribal laws. Forget your high school history textbook. This was the OG encyclopedia, with each story meticulously crafted to teach, inform, and occasionally scare the living daylights out of you for good measure. Take the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, for example, a political marvel of the pre-Columbian world. Oral tradition was pivotal in maintaining the complex political structure of the Confederacy. Through stories they passed on the great law of peace, a sophisticated system of governance that influenced even the founding fathers of the United States. Yes, that's right. Benjamin Franklin might have taken a few notes from these indigenous wisdom keepers. Storytellers also served as moral compasses, guiding behavior and decision-making. These narratives often included spiritual elements and lessons about the natural world, which were crucial in societies deeply connected with their environment. The tales were the ultimate multi-tool, serving as a map, a manual, and a mirror reflecting the values of the community. And let's not forget the cliffhangers. Oh, the cliffhangers! Just when you thought you had the story figured out, bam! A twist more shocking than a surprise character death in Game of Thrones. These narratives were crafted to keep listeners on the edge of their seats, eager for the next installment. It wasn't just about passing time, it was about keeping culture alive in the most engaging way possible. For example, the Hopi people have a rich tapestry of stories that explain everything from the creation of the world to the migration of their ancestors. These aren't just bedtime stories. They're a sophisticated repository of knowledge that includes astronomical observations, agricultural practices, and social customs. It's like a PhD in anthropology, but much more entertaining and without the student loans. Yet, let's not romanticize this too much. The harsh reality is that the advent of European colonization severely disrupted these oral traditions. The introduction of written language, often enforced through missionary schools, was seen as civilizing. But in reality, it was a tool of cultural erasure. Oral histories, with their fluidity and adaptability, didn't fit neatly into the rigid boxes of Western documentation, and so many stories were lost along with the languages they were told in. A sobering statistic, out of the 300 indigenous languages once spoken in North America, only about 175 remain today, with many of those at risk of extinction. However, there's a phoenix from the ashes element to the story. Many indigenous communities are actively working to revive their languages and oral traditions. They're recording elders' stories, teaching younger generations, and even using digital media to spread these narratives far and wide. In a twist worthy of any good story, the very technology that once threatened these traditions is now being used to save them. So, as you tuck in for the night, remember this: the oral histories of Indigenous Americans aren't relics of the past. They're vibrant, evolving narratives that continue to shape identities, inspire resilience, and defy the odds. It's a story of survival, and it's far from over. And speaking of survival, let's dive deeper into the rich tapestry of myths and legends that have persevered through the corridors of time, despite a few episodes of creative storytelling along the way. You see, oral histories have this delightful quirk we like to call the telephone game effect. You know how it goes. One person whispers a phrase to another, and by the time it reaches the last person, "I like strawberry pie," somehow morphs into "I fight strawberry skies." It's human nature, really. We love a good yarn, and sometimes the yarn spins itself into a full-blown tapestry of imaginative splendor. Take the legend of the Wendigo from Algonquian folklore. It's a story that would make Stephen King proud. The Wendigo is often depicted as a monstrous, cannibalistic entity, a terrifying embodiment of insatiable greed and hunger. Now, while the Wendigo certainly made for some spine-chilling campfire storytelling, it also served a deeper purpose. It was a cautionary tale against the dangers of gluttony and excess, crucial lessons in societies that needed to live sustainably off the land. But let's face it, the more horrifying the tale, the more likely it was to stick in your mind like a catchy pop song, albeit one with a much darker beat. Historians have their work cut out for them when it comes to separating the factual wheat from the legendary chaff. It's a bit like being a detective, sifting through clues left behind by generations past. They look at linguistic shifts, archaeological evidence, and historical records to piece together what might have actually happened. It's a tough gig, especially when you're dealing with stories that have been told and retold over centuries, each time possibly embellished with a little extra flair. Consider the tale of the Anishinabe's Nanabojo, a cultural hero and trickster figure. His stories are brimming with cosmic adventures and moral lessons, like the time he created the earth by piling mud on a turtle's back. This tale isn't just for laughs, though. It's a metaphorical exploration of creation and balance, highlighting the Anishinabe's deep connection to nature. As enchanting as these stories are, historians have to dig deeper, sometimes literally, to understand the environmental and social contexts in which they were told. How do you untangle a web of myth and reality? Carefully, and with a healthy dose of skepticism. But don't get me wrong, these myths and legends are not just flights of fancy. They are historical vessels carrying kernels of truth about the societies that crafted them. Take, for instance, the story of the White Buffalo Calf Woman from the Lakota Sioux. The legend speaks of a mystical woman who brought sacred wisdom and ceremonies to the people. Beyond its spiritual significance, this tale underscores the buffalo's critical role in the Lakota way of life, providing food, clothing, and tools. It's a story that encapsulates the economic realities of the Plains tribes, where the buffalo was nothing short of a walking department store. Let's not forget the telephone game effect's cheekier moments, where stories grew legs and took on lives of their own. The Cherokee's Uktena, a horned serpent, is a classic example. Early versions might have been straightforward accounts of giant snakes encountered in the wild, but as the story slithered through generations, it picked up supernatural attributes, glowing scales, a crystal in its forehead, the ability to hypnotize. These embellishments added layers of intrigue and awe, ensuring the tale's survival. The Uktena became a symbol of the mysterious and the unknown, a narrative thread woven through the fabric of Cherokee culture. Meanwhile, historians, like diligent mythbusters, trace these stories back to their potential roots, examining how the natural world inspired larger-than-life imaginations. The transformation of these tales over time is not just a whimsical game of Chinese whispers, it's a testament to the adaptability and resilience of indigenous cultures. Oral histories were not static relics. They evolved as communities faced new challenges and opportunities. When European settlers arrived, bringing new diseases, technologies, and pressures, these stories adapted to reflect changing realities. They became tools of resistance, resilience, and revival, helping to maintain cultural continuity in the face of upheaval. For example, the Navajo's coyote stories, featuring the iconic trickster figure, are masterclasses in adaptability. Coyote is a character who often gets himself into and occasionally out of trouble through wit and cunning. As the Navajo faced new challenges, Coyote's tales evolved, becoming allegories for navigating an increasingly complex world. It's like the ultimate survival guide with a mischievous grin. So how do historians separate fact from fiction in the swirling sea of stories? Well, they employ a mix of archaeology, linguistics, and good old-fashioned detective work. They also consult the oral historians themselves, elders and storytellers, who are the living links to these rich traditions. It's a collaborative effort, a fusion of modern science and ancient wisdom, aiming to preserve the past without flattening its vibrancy. It's clear that oral histories are not just quaint relics of a bygone era. They are dynamic, living narratives that continue to evolve. They are a testament to the ingenuity and resilience of Indigenous peoples, who have used storytelling as a tool for survival and cultural continuity. So next time you hear a tale that sounds too fantastical to be true, remember, the truth is often stranger and more fascinating than fiction. As we move forward, we'll continue to unravel these historical threads, exploring how oral histories have shaped identities and inspired resilience. The stories are far from over, and neither is our exploration. So stay tuned, because if history teaches us anything, it's that the next chapter is always just around the corner, waiting to surprise us all. As we dive deeper into the labyrinth of oral traditions, it's clear that these stories were more than just the ancient world's Netflix queue. They were the social glue and political roadmap that held communities together and occasionally tore them apart. Take the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Oh yes, we're back with these political maestros. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill neighborhood association, no sir. The Confederacy was a powerhouse of diplomacy, bound together by oral traditions that were more binding than any ink and paper treaty. Picture this: 6 nations, each with their own agendas, yet united under the great law of peace. This wasn't some kumbaya moment. It was a sophisticated political system that would make Machiavelli nod in approval. These oral traditions were the means by which laws were passed down and grievances aired. And let's be real, in an era where a reply-all email didn't exist, storytelling was the ultimate communication tool. The stories ensured everyone was on the same page, literally, since there were no pages. It was an exercise in democracy, light years ahead of its time. The Great Law of Peace emphasized consensus and cooperation, concepts that would later influence, wait for it, the United States Constitution. So the next time you hear about the Founding Fathers, remember they might have borrowed a trick or two from these indigenous politicos. But let's not kid ourselves, these stories weren't all about peace and harmony. They also stirred up rivalries, and not the friendly kind you see on reality TV. The tales had power, and power, as we know, can corrupt. A charismatic storyteller could sway opinions and stoke tensions, much like a modern-day spin doctor. Oral histories were used to assert dominance, challenge rival tribes, and sometimes to justify less than noble actions. Now, onto the economic implications of storytelling. Yes, you heard me right, economics. You might not think of a story as having a dollar value, but in these societies, a well-told tale could be worth its weight in wampum. Consider the cunning fox, a recurring character in many indigenous stories, often delivering sage trading advice. These stories were like the Wall Street Journal of their time, offering insights into trade negotiations and resource management. The fox, with its sly demeanor, often illustrated lessons in shrewdness and strategy, vital for communities engaged in trade. In a world without stock markets or financial advisors, oral histories were the investment guides. They taught the importance of fairness and foresight in trade, crucial for survival in an unpredictable environment. If you were bartering for, say, a canoe, you better have listened to your community's fox tales. One wrong move, and you could end up with a leaky vessel. The economic influence of oral traditions extended beyond trading tips. They were also instrumental in establishing alliances. Let's not forget that. Alliances back then weren't sealed with a handshake and a press conference. They were often solidified over shared stories and reciprocal narratives. When two tribes found common ground in their tales, it laid the foundation for cooperation in trade and defense. This was the ancient version of LinkedIn connections, where your network was built through shared culture and mutual understanding. But let's bust a myth here. Not all stories were noble or high-minded. Some were just there to entertain and distract from the harsh realities of pre-modern life. You can't blame them, really. Imagine a winter so cold that even your thoughts freeze. At times like these, a humorous tale about a bumbling trickster could be the ticket to communal warmth. These stories reinforced social bonds, reminding everyone that while life was tough, laughter was always in abundant supply. Social norms were also shaped and reinforced by oral traditions. The stories acted as both carrot and stick, promoting virtues like bravery and honesty while warning of the consequences of vice. The hero's journey in these tales often mirrored the values a community held dear. A young listener, wide-eyed and impressionable, would find a moral compass in these narratives, much like how modern audiences might look to superheroes for inspiration. The difference? These heroes didn't wear capes. They wore the weight of tradition on their shoulders. And then there were the villains, those pesky characters who served as cautionary tales. They were the embodiment of what not to do, the social pariahs who ended up in metaphorical ditches due to their greed or cowardice. These stories were society's way of saying, "Don't be that guy." They were a form of social control, ensuring conformity to cultural norms without the need for written laws or police forces. In unraveling these narratives, historians are like cultural archaeologists, sifting through layers of story sediment to find the nuggets of historical truth. They examine how oral histories preserved the social fabric, maintained order, and occasionally sowed discord. The stories are a window into a world where knowledge was power, and the human capacity for creativity was the only limit. But let's not forget the harsh realities. The arrival of Europeans disrupted these storytelling traditions in profound ways. Written records replaced oral narratives, and the richness of storytelling was often lost in translation, literally. The economic and social systems that had been underpinned by these stories faced unprecedented challenges. Yet, like the resilient fox, Indigenous communities adapted, using oral traditions to resist and reclaim their cultural heritage. So as we continue to explore this fascinating world of oral histories, remember, these stories are not just relics of the past. They're living, breathing entities that have shaped and continue to shape the societies that tell them. They're the threads that connect us to our ancestors, reminding us of where we've been and guiding us toward where we're going. And who knows what tales the next chapter will bring. Stay tuned, because history, as always, has surprises up its sleeve. Now, back in the day, if you were to pull up a chair by the fire and sit down with the ancestors, you might have heard tales that would make your head spin faster than a vinyl record. But let's face it, some of those stories have been given the Hollywood treatment over the years, morphing into the myth of the noble savage. The noble savage, that romanticized notion of indigenous peoples living in an idyllic state of nature, untouched by the corrupting influences of civilization. Sounds poetic, right? But it's about as accurate as using a butter knife to do brain surgery. Let's break this down. The noble savage trope paints indigenous people as living in perfect harmony with nature, devoid of personal ambition, greed, or any of those pesky human flaws. Spoiler alert, this narrative is about as realistic as a unicorn sighting. Sure, indigenous societies had a deep connection to the land, but they were also highly sophisticated, with complex social structures, trade networks, and yes, even a little drama now and then. They were humans after all. Take the Mississippian culture, for instance, known for its city of Cahokia, which flourished around 1050 to 150 CE. This was no sleepy village, It was a bustling urban centre, home to tens of thousands of people. Cahokia boasted massive earthwork mounds, some of which were taller than a 10-story building. The labour and organisational skills required to construct these mounds would make an ancient pharaoh jealous. Yet, despite this evidence of complexity, the noble savage myth persists, ignoring the economic ingenuity and adaptability that allowed Cahokia to thrive. And let's not forget the trade. Oh, the trade! Indigenous American societies were part of vast trade networks that spanned the continent, exchanging goods like obsidian, copper, shell beads, and more. These weren't just casual swaps at a neighbourhood garage sale. We're talking about trade routes that stretched thousands of miles, requiring sophisticated negotiation skills and economic savvy. The noble savage trope conveniently glosses over these economic realities, reducing complex societies to mere caricatures. Let's jump to the Haida people of the Pacific Northwest, renowned for their intricate art and totem poles. These weren't just decorative pieces, they were status symbols, akin to driving a luxury car today. The Haida's ability to manipulate social status through art and trade demonstrates a nuanced understanding of wealth and power dynamics. So much for the simplistic noble savage stereotype. Now, why has this myth persisted? Well, it's simple. It makes for a tidy narrative. The noble savage trope serves a dual purpose. It romanticizes the past while simultaneously justifying colonial expansion. By portraying indigenous people as childlike and simple, European colonizers could rationalize their conquests as a civilizing mission. It's a classic case of rewriting history to fit one's agenda, a tactic as old as storytelling itself. But hold on a second, because the story's not all gloom and doom. Despite centuries of cultural bulldozing, indigenous oral traditions have shown remarkable resilience. These narratives were not just wiped out by the arrival of quill pens and parchment paper. Rather, they adapted and survived in ingenious ways. It's like trying to squash a grape, only to find it's turned into a fine wine instead. Consider the Cherokees' use of the written Cherokee syllabary, developed by Sequoyah in the early 19th century. This wasn't just a means to record oral stories. It was a tool of empowerment, allowing the Cherokee to document their own history and resist cultural erasure. By 1828, the Cherokee Phoenix, the first newspaper in a Native American language, was rolling off the presses, proving that oral traditions could evolve without losing their essence. Indigenous communities have also embraced modern technology to preserve and share their stories. Digital archives, podcasts, and YouTube channels are becoming the new campfires, where ancient tales can be told to a global audience. It's like the ultimate plot twist, using the very tools that once threatened to erase these narratives to ensure their survival. Talk about poetic justice. And let's not forget the role of language revitalization efforts. Programs aimed at teaching indigenous languages to younger generations are breathing new life into oral traditions. It's a race against time, with over 175 indigenous languages in North America at risk of extinction. But with each word spoken, a piece of history is preserved, and a cultural connection is strengthened. So, next time you hear a tale of indigenous people living in perfect harmony with nature, remember to dig a little deeper. There's a rich tapestry of history lurking beneath the surface, filled with stories of adaptability, resilience, and complexity. The noble savage myth may have made for good storytelling, but the truth is far more fascinating and far more human. As we continue to unravel these narratives, let's keep the momentum going. There's much more to explore in the vibrant world of Indigenous oral histories, from the stories themselves to the modern efforts to keep them alive. So, stay tuned, because history is an ever-unfolding story, and we've only just scratched the surface. Now, as we transition into the modern era, let's cast a sharp eye on the digital renaissance of Indigenous oral histories. You might think that ancient tales and cutting-edge technology make an odd couple, like pairing a woolly mammoth with a Tesla. Yet, here we are, watching traditional narratives pirouette across digital platforms like TikTok and YouTube, transforming the storytelling landscape in ways our ancestors could never have fathomed. Let's start with a reality check. The digital world is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's a bulldozer, capable of wiping out cultural nuances with a single viral meme. On the other, it's a masterful tool for preservation, allowing Indigenous voices to reach audiences far beyond their traditional borders. Take the Ojibwe, whose digital initiatives have spurred the resurgence of their language through online platforms. This isn't just a cultural rewind, it's a strategic maneuver to ensure that Ojibwe kids can chat in their native tongue while scrolling through their social feeds. Talk about multitasking. The numbers speak volumes. As of 2023, there are over 2,000 Indigenous-led digital projects aimed at storytelling and language preservation. This isn't just a cultural hobby, it's a full-blown movement. Platforms like First Nations Development Institute's Native Language Immersion Initiative have funneled millions of dollars into grassroots projects that are as local as they are global. It's like a cultural Kickstarter, where each dollar is a vote for linguistic diversity. Now, let's dive into the realm of contemporary art and literature, those creative bastions where oral histories are finding new life. Take the work of Tommy Orange, a Cheyenne and Arapaho author whose novel There dives into the complexities of urban Indigenous identities. His storytelling approach is a tapestry woven with threads of oral tradition and modern narrative techniques. It's like listening to a vinyl record with a digital twist, where each chapter echoes the rhythm of ancestral voices. This resurgence isn't just for the art connoisseurs, though. Indigenous oral histories are muscling their way into the political arena too. You see, stories are power, and power means influence. In Canada, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, TRC, used oral testimonies from over 6,070 Indigenous survivors of residential schools to reveal the brutal realities of cultural erasure. This wasn't just storytelling, it was a seismic shift in public consciousness, a wake-up call that reverberated through the halls of power and demanded accountability. And here's the kicker. These oral histories are influencing policy. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, adopted by 44 countries, emphasizes the importance of protecting and promoting Indigenous cultures and languages. It's a global acknowledgement that these narratives are not just quaint traditions, but vital lifelines of human heritage. The TRC's work has been a catalyst for change, forcing governments to confront their colonial pasts and, hopefully, chart a more inclusive future. But let's not get too starry-eyed. There's a darker undercurrent here, a reminder that the digital age, with all its promises, still harbours threats. The commodification of culture is a real concern, where Indigenous narratives risk being reduced to clickbait in the relentless pursuit of likes and shares. It's a delicate dance between visibility and exploitation, one that requires constant vigilance. It's like walking a tightrope made of ancestral wisdom over a pit filled with hashtags and algorithms. Yet, despite the challenges, there's an undeniable sense of empowerment. Indigenous storytellers are taking control of their narratives, refusing to let them be diluted by external interpretations. They are, in essence, reclaiming their stories from the clutches of history's victors and reshaping them for future generations. This isn't just about survival, it's about thriving in a world that often forgets to hit the pause button and listen. So, what does this all mean for the legacy of Indigenous oral histories? It's a reminder that these stories are not static relics of a forgotten past. They are living, breathing entities, constantly evolving and adapting to the world around them. They are the original social networks, connecting generations through shared experiences and collective wisdom. In a world where everything seems transient, these narratives offer a sense of continuity, a thread that ties us to the past while charting a course for the future. As we wrap up our journey through the labyrinth of Indigenous oral histories, let's leave behind the myth of the noble savage and embrace the reality of resilient societies that have weathered the storms of colonization and cultural erosion. These stories aren't just the echoes of a bygone era. They are the foundation upon which future generations will stand. In the grand tapestry of human history, Indigenous oral traditions are the vibrant threads that add depth, color, and meaning. And remember, history is never just about the past. It's a conversation with the present and a dialogue with the future. So the next time you hear an Indigenous story, whether it's whispered by the fire or streamed through your earbuds, take a moment to appreciate the journey it has travelled to reach you. Because in the end, these stories are not just tales of survival, they are testaments to the enduring human spirit. And that's a saga worth sharing. If you ever thought your daily calendar was a pain to deal with, Just wait until you hear about the Mayans and their celestial obsession. These guys were the original stargazers. Forget Instagram influencers. They were the ones who really knew how to make a calendar go viral. Long before anyone was syncing schedules on their smartphones, the Mayans were orchestrating their lives around the cosmos with mathematical precision that would make even Einstein do a double take. Let's dive into their numerical brainchild. The Mayans were not just playing around with sticks and stones, unless those stones were used to build astronomical observatories. They were crunching numbers like 260 and 365 as if they were predicting the next big stock market crash. And they were doing this without any modern gadgets or even a TI-84 calculator. Their obsession with these numbers wasn't just a passing fad like those viral dance challenges on TikTok. Nope, for the Mayans, numbers had cosmic significance. The number 260 reflected the sacred calendar, the Zolkin, which was basically their celestial to-do list, synced with the divine and human activities. Meanwhile, 36.5 was the number of days in the solar year, courtesy of the Harb, which was like our year, but with more human sacrifices and fewer office parties. Let's talk about their calendar systems. The Mayans had not one, not two, but at least three main calendars that they juggled simultaneously. This was long before Google Calendar was there to save us from double-booking awkward meetings. Their long count calendar was essentially a cosmic stopwatch, keeping track of days from a mythological starting point around August 11, 3114 BCE. That's over 5 millennia ago, folks. You can bet they were counting down to something more significant than the next season of their favorite show. These calendars were more than just stone tablets with dates. They were complex systems that involved interlocking cycles, like gears in a cosmic clock, ensuring the universe kept ticking along nicely. And they had a knack for predicting solar eclipses with stunning accuracy. These prophecies were more reliable than your local weather app predicting rain on your parade. They could forecast these cosmic events centuries in advance, which probably made them the ultimate party planners for those annual eclipse viewing bashes. In fact, their predictions were so spot on that it almost makes you wonder why we still get caught in unexpected downpours after checking our phones. The Mayans could pinpoint the timing of these celestial events with such precision that they put modern meteorologists to shame. And they did it while working with tools that were essentially the ancient equivalent of sticks and stones, proving once again that sometimes less is more when it comes to brain power. But why were they so obsessed with the stars? This wasn't just about impressing their allies or intimidating their enemies, though it certainly helped. The Mayans believed that their gods inhabited these celestial bodies, and by understanding the heavens, they could keep the divine forces on their side. It was like having a direct line to the cosmic customer service desk, ensuring that the universe stayed on their good side. The Mayans' starry-eyed devotion wasn't just about religious fervor, it was a matter of survival and social cohesion. They aligned their agricultural activities with these celestial cycles, ensuring that they sowed and reaped at the right times. In a world where missing the planting season could mean the difference between feast and famine, this was no small feat. These astronomical calculations were a matter of life and death, and the Mayans were determined to stay one step ahead of the cosmic game. Their prowess in astronomy and mathematics laid the groundwork for a civilization that flourished in the dense jungles of Central America. They didn't have the luxury of wide-open plains or fertile river valleys like some of their contemporaries. Instead, they had to carve out their existence amidst the thick foliage and unpredictable weather patterns, using their celestial knowledge as their guide. The Mayans' dedication to the stars and numbers was a testament to their ingenuity and resilience. They looked up at the sky and saw not just twinkling lights but a complex system of order and harmony, one that they could decipher and use to their advantage. In a way, they were the original hackers, cracking the cosmic code to make sense of the universe and their place within it. So, as you glance at your digital calendar, spare a thought for the Mayans, those ancient number crunchers who turned stargazing into an art form and made sure their celestial schedules were always on point. Their mathematical and astronomical legacy is a reminder of humanity's enduring quest to understand the cosmos, even when the odds seem insurmountable. It's a starry tale of precision, persistence, and a little bit of cosmic luck. Speaking of cosmic luck and ingenuity, let's shift our gaze from the stars to the stone, where the Mayan architects were busy crafting marvels that would make even the most seasoned modern engineer sweat a little, into the grand stage of Chichen Itza, a place where math, mythology and masonry met for a celestial dance-off. If you think your local high-rise is impressive, just wait until you meet El Castillo, also known as the Temple of Kukulkan. This pyramid wasn't just a pretty face on the tourist brochure, it was a multifunctional wonder that served as an astronomical observatory, a sundial, and on special occasions, a venue for some divine snake charades. El Castillo, standing at about 98 feet, or roughly 30 meters for the metric-minded, is the tallest structure in Chichen Itza, drawing eyes and awe from miles around. But beyond its towering presence, this pyramid is a mathematical masterpiece. It boasts a total of 365 steps, one for each day of the solar year. This wasn't a coincidence or a nod to future stairmasters, it was a calculated decision that turned the pyramid itself into a giant calendar. Each step symbolized a day, and the structure as a whole served as a reminder of the Mayans' obsession with celestial cycles. But wait, there's more. Twice a year, during the spring and autumn equinoxes, the pyramid pulls off a cosmic party trick that would make even David Copperfield take notes. As the sun sets, the play of light and shadow creates the illusion of a serpent slithering down the steps of the north staircase. This isn't just any snake, mind you, but Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god. It's a spectacle that draws crowds even today, blending the mystical with the mathematical in a way that screams ancient architectural genius. Now, let's pause for a moment and consider the logistics. Building something like El Castillo in today's world would involve cranes, computer-aided design, and a small army of hard-hatted workers demanding coffee breaks and overtime pay. But the Mayans managed to pull this off without any of those modern conveniences. Imagine coordinating a construction project of this scale with nothing but manpower, some rudimentary tools, and an astronomical understanding that rivaled Galileo's. It's a testament to their organizational prowess and sheer determination, not to mention a labor force that was likely highly motivated, or at least strongly encouraged. The practicalities of such an endeavor are mind-boggling. The limestone blocks used in the pyramid's construction were quarried nearby, but transporting and assembling them required an impressive combination of human labor and ingenuity. It's estimated that it took thousands of workers several decades to complete the structure. And with no cranes or bulldozers in sight, the Mayans relied on sheer muscle power and a deep understanding of physics to hoist these monumental stones into place. They used simple tools like levers and wooden rollers, proving that with enough determination and perhaps a touch of cosmic inspiration, you can achieve the seemingly impossible. The economic implications of building such a massive structure are also worth noting. This wasn't just a vanity project, it was a statement of power and sophistication. The resources and labor invested in El Castillo were a reflection of the Mayans' ability to mobilize and sustain a workforce, which in turn reinforced their political and religious authority. The pyramid wasn't just a temple, it was a testament to the civilization's social and economic might, a way of telling their neighbors, look what we can do. We must be doing something right. Of course, the romanticism of El Castillo as a mystical, snake-summoning wonder tends to overshadow the gritty reality of construction. The truth is, for those workers hauling stones under the blazing sun, the pyramid was less about celestial beauty and more about back-breaking labor. The grandeur of the finished product masks the sweat and toil that went into every inch of its limestone facade. It's a reminder that behind every great monument are countless untold stories of human effort and sacrifice. And yet, despite the harsh realities, it's hard not to be enchanted by the ingenuity and ambition that El Castillo represents. The Mayans didn't just build a pyramid. They created a cosmic stage where their gods could dance with light and shadow, where math and mythology could coalesce in a stunning visual feast. It's a legacy that continues to captivate the imaginations of all who visit Chichen Itza, a testament to the enduring human desire to connect with something greater than ourselves, even if it means moving mountains, or at least a whole lot of limestone. As we wrap our minds around the scale and significance of El Castillo, it's clear that the Mayans were playing a long game, one that involved not just survival, but also a quest for cosmic harmony. Their architectural feats were more than just displays of power. They were expressions of a worldview that saw the universe as a complex, interconnected system, one that could be understood and even influenced through careful observation and calculation. And in that sense, they were not just builders of stone structures, but architects of a celestial narrative that still echoes through history. So next time you find yourself marveling at the grandeur of a modern skyscraper, spare a thought for the Mayans and their monumental achievements, crafted with nothing but raw human effort and a celestial vision. El Castillo stands as a reminder that sometimes the most powerful tools we have are the ones we carry within us, our minds, our hands, and our unwavering belief in the magic of the universe. And as we leave this chapter open, ready to explore more of the Mayan wonders, remember that the story of Chichen Itza and its extraordinary pyramid is just one piece of a much larger cosmic puzzle. As we leave the lofty heights of El Castillo, still echoing with the whispers of ancient architects, our journey turns towards the Mayan astronomers, those cosmic conductors who weren't just stargazing for kicks. Nope, they were orchestrating the social and political symphony of their time, wielding their astronomical prowess to sway empires and seal the fate of rulers. It's like Game of Thrones, but with more math and fewer dragons. These astronomers were the rock stars of the Mayan world, minus the groupies and pyrotechnics. They had the ear of kings and the gaze of the gods, serving as both scientists and political actors. Picture them standing atop their celestial observatories, like the one at Uxmal, with its elliptical platform perfectly aligned with Venus. This wasn't just an odd architectural choice, it was a cosmic command center, and these astronomers were calling the shots. You see, in the Mayan world, the heavens were a cosmic scoreboard, and astronomers were keeping score. They were the bridge between the earthly and the divine, interpreting celestial events to maintain cosmic balance and social order. And they had some serious job security because, let's face it, when you can predict a solar eclipse to the day, people tend to listen when you talk about the stars, especially when the stakes involved weren't just weather forecasts, but the very legitimacy of rulers themselves. In a political landscape where divine favor was as good as cash in the royal treasury, having an astronomer in your corner was like having the best PR team money could buy. Kings weren't just basking in the glow of their own grandeur, they were basking in the glow of celestial events that, conveniently, always seemed to affirm their right to rule. Coincidence? Hardly. These were stage-managed cosmic endorsements, with astronomers pulling the strings behind the curtain. Take, for instance, Lord Shield Jaguar Athur of Yaxchilan, who ruled from 681 to 742 CE. His reign was marked by a series of celestial events, all meticulously recorded in stone. These records weren't just historical footnotes, they were carefully curated narratives designed to show that the cosmos was on his side. Eclipses and planetary alignments didn't just happen, they were woven into the fabric of political propaganda, enhancing the king's divine mandate. And then there were the sacrificial ceremonies, those gruesome affairs that we might find unsettling today but were as common as Tuesday Tucker night in the Mayan world. These sacrifices weren't just about appeasing the gods, they were cosmic currency, ensuring that the stars remained in alignment and the universe continued to hum along nicely. The astronomers played a crucial role here too, pinpointing the perfect timing for these rites to ensure maximum cosmic impact. It was a delicate dance of blood and starlight, where human hearts were the ultimate offering in the celestial marketplace. Now, before you start picturing a bunch of hooded druids chanting under a full moon, remember that this was serious business. The Mayans believed that the universe was a vast, interconnected system, and every celestial event was a piece of a larger cosmic puzzle. Astronomers weren't just interpreting the stars, they were actively shaping the narrative, ensuring that every eclipse, every solstice, was a chapter in the grand story of their civilization. And here's a thought to chew on. If the Mayans had astrology columns in their newspapers, they might have been more accurate than today's horoscopes. Forget vague predictions about love and career. These guys were calculating celestial cycles with the precision of a Swiss watch. Their understanding of the stars was so profound that it's no wonder they attributed divine significance to these celestial bodies. In a world where the stars dictated everything from planting seasons to royal fates, you'd want your astrologer to be on point. But let's not romanticize the role of these celestial savants too much. For all their wisdom and influence, Mayan astronomers were still human, subject to the same political machinations and power plays as any court advisor. Sure, they could wield the stars to legitimize a king, but they also had to navigate the treacherous waters of court politics, ensuring their celestial predictions aligned with the ruling party's agenda. One wrong prediction, and they could find themselves in hot water, or worse, a sacrificial altar. Yet, despite the high stakes and potential pitfalls, the Mayan astronomers thrived, cementing their place in history as both scientists and shapers of destiny. Their legacy is a testament to the power of knowledge and the enduring human desire to understand and control the cosmos. They remind us that even in the ancient world, the universe was not just a backdrop, but an active player in the human drama, a celestial canvas on which the stories of empires were painted. So next time you check your horoscope, spare a thought for those ancient stargazers who turned the night sky into a political chessboard. They remind us that while the stars may be eternal, the stories we weave around them are as transient as the flicker of a candle in the cosmic night. And as we continue our journey through the Mayan world, remember that the stars may guide our path, but it's the human stories that truly illuminate the way. And speaking of celestial narratives, let's tackle one of the most infamous cosmic misreads of our time, the so-called Mayan doomsdays of 2012. Remember when everyone thought the world was going to end because of a misinterpreted ancient calendar? Yeah, that was fun. Spoiler alert, the world is still here, and so are our calendars, inconvenient as ever. The whole hullabaloo stemmed from the Mayan long count calendar, which is basically the cosmic equivalent of an odometer. The long count calendar was set to roll over on December 21st, 2012, a date that many misinterpreted as the Mayans penciling in the apocalypse. But if you were expecting fire and brimstone, you'd have been sorely disappointed. This was more like the cosmic equivalent of your car hitting 100,000 miles. Not the end, just a new beginning. Here's the skinny. The long count calendar was designed to track vast periods of time, spanning roughly 5,125 solar years from its start date in 3114 BCE. Think of it like an ancient Fitbit, logging time in a grand celestial cycle called a Baktun, which lasted 144,000 days, or about 39,426 years. The 2012 date simply marked the end of the 13th Baktun and the start of the 14th. For the Mayans, this was a momentous occasion, akin to popping a bottle of cosmic champagne to toast a new era, not a reason to stockpile canned goods and build a bunker. Yet somehow, a misunderstanding of this ancient timekeeping masterpiece spiraled into full-blown apocalypse hysteria, complete with Hollywood blockbusters and conspiracy theories. A testament, perhaps, to our innate love for disaster flicks and the thrill of a good doomsday prophecy. But while contemporary doomsayers were busy predicting the end of all things, the Mayans themselves had more pressing issues on their hands. Let's get real. The Mayans weren't poring over their stone tablets, nervously counting down to 2012. They were busy dealing with the very tangible challenges of their world, like crop failures and political turmoil. You see, even the most sophisticated astronomical knowledge couldn't change the fact that the Mayans were living in a tough neighborhood. The Yucatan Peninsula was no Garden of Eden. It was more like a leafy labyrinth with a penchant for droughts and soil depletion. Agriculture was the lifeblood of the Mayan civilization, and maintaining the delicate balance between human needs and natural resources was a constant juggling act. When the rains didn't come, or when the soil couldn't keep up with the demands of a growing population, things got dicey. Food shortages could spark social unrest faster than you can say corn crisis, and no amount of celestial maneuvering could placate a hungry populace. And then there were the political dynamics, a complex web of alliances and rivalries that would make even Machiavelli raise an eyebrow. Mayan city-states were constantly jostling for power, engaging in the ancient equivalent of a high-stakes chess game. Kings and rulers had to navigate this precarious landscape using every tool at their disposal, including those trusty astronomers and their cosmic forecasts, to maintain their grip on power. But let's not get too bogged down in the nitty-gritty of Mayan geopolitics. The point is, while modern folks were fretting over an imagined apocalypse, the real Mayan world was far more concerned with the here and now, feeding its people, managing its resources, and ensuring that the stars aligned in their favor. They had a practical, if not somewhat fatalistic, approach to life, understanding that while they could read the cosmic script, they couldn't always rewrite it. The 2012 phenomenon, while a spectacular display of human imagination, ultimately says more about us than it does about the Mayans. It highlights our enduring fascination with the end times, a theme that transcends cultures and eras. From the Book of Revelation to Nostradamus, humanity has always had a knack for apocalyptic storytelling, and the Mayan calendar was simply the latest chapter in this timeless saga. In the end, the real story of the Mayan calendar is not one of doom and destruction, but of renewal and continuity. It's a reminder that while our calendars may flip and our clocks may tick, the universe keeps spinning, indifferent to our dramas and deadlines. The Mayans understood this, viewing time as a cycle rather than a straight line, a concept that's both comforting and humbling in its cosmic perspective. So, as we leave the myth of the Mayan apocalypse behind, let's take a moment to appreciate the real wisdom of their celestial timekeeping. It's a testament to human ingenuity, a reminder that even in the face of uncertainty and change, we have the power to read the stars and chart our course through the cosmic sea. And as we prepare to explore the next chapter of our story, remember that the Mayans, like us, were just trying to make sense of a vast, mysterious universe, one day or Buckdon at a time. The Mayans, with their celestial calendars and grand stone edifices, leave behind a legacy that's as captivating as it is complex. While Hollywood might have you believe their greatest contribution was predicting the end of the world, spoiler, they didn't. The real treasure trove lies in their astronomical prowess that continues to tickle the grey matter of modern scientists and starry-eyed dreamers alike. Fast forward to today, and you'll find that the echoes of Mayan astronomy are still reverberating through the halls of science and the annals of culture. Their intricate understanding of celestial cycles has turned their once secretive knowledge into a public spectacle. Take, for instance, the fascination with eclipses. While your average Joe might rely on a weather app to know when to pack an umbrella, eclipse chasers around the world owe a nod to the Mayans, whose eclipse predictions were as accurate as they were awe-inspiring. In fact, these ancient astronomers were essentially the original cosmic event planners. Their ability to predict solar eclipses was so precise, it rivals our modern capabilities. It's a bit like looking to the Mayans and thinking, wow, these guys were doing celestial calculus while the rest of the world was barely counting on their fingers. And they did all this without the aid of telescopes or fancy software, just good old-fashioned human ingenuity and a lot of skygazing. But the legacy of Mayan astronomy isn't just a tale of scientific achievement. It's also a story deeply interwoven with cultural significance. Their calendars, particularly the Tzolk'in and Harb, have inspired everything from New Age spiritual practices to popular fiction. The Mayan long count calendar, despite its infamous misinterpretation, serves as a reminder of the human fascination with time and its cyclical nature. It's a cosmic dance that continues to inspire those seeking to decode the mysteries of the universe. And here's where we encounter a delicious irony. While the Mayans were busy mapping the stars and charting cosmic cycles with impressive accuracy, they couldn't quite predict the collapse of their own civilization. Their decline, influenced by a cocktail of environmental stress, resource depletion, and social upheaval, serves as a stark reminder that even the wisest stargazers can't foresee every twist of fate. It's a bit like watching a seasoned poker player who can read every other player at the table but misses the straight flush in their own hand. This brings us to a sharp observation about the unpredictability of human history. The Mayans, despite their astronomical acumen, were ultimately at the mercy of forces beyond their control, be it droughts that parched their crops or political fragmentation that frayed the threads of their society. It's a humbling reminder that while we can map the stars, predicting the human condition is another game altogether. And yet, the Mayans have left us with more than just a tale of caution. Their astronomical insights continue to inform contemporary science. Modern astronomers often look back at ancient records to confirm or refine their understanding of cosmic phenomena. It's a testament to the enduring human quest for knowledge, one that transcends centuries and civilizations. The Mayans didn't just gaze at the stars, they turned them into a tapestry of understanding that we're still unraveling today. Moreover, their legacy has seeped into popular culture, from movies to music, and even fashion. Mayan motifs adorn everything from jewelry to tattoos, each piece a nod to a civilization that dared to dream big and reach for the stars. Their influence is felt in the philosophical musings of those who ponder time as a non-linear journey, echoing the Mayan belief in cycles rather than straight lines. It's a worldview that resonates with many today, offering a lens through which to view our own place in the cosmos. And let's not forget the economic implications of this legacy. Tourism thrives in places like Chichen Itza and Tikal, where visitors flock to witness the architectural wonders of a bygone era. These ancient sites are not just relics of the past, they are vibrant hubs of cultural exchange, drawing people from around the world to marvel at the ingenuity and artistry of the Mayans. It's an industry that pumps millions into local economies, proving that the Mayans are still making an impact, albeit in a different currency. As we reflect on the legacy of Mayan astronomy, we're reminded of the dual nature of human achievement, the brilliance and the blind spots. The Mayans teach us that while we can strive to understand the cosmos, the future remains an enigma, shaped by forces both celestial and terrestrial. Their story is a blend of romance and reality, a cosmic tale that continues to captivate and inspire. In the end, the Mayans left us more than just stone pyramids and celestial calendars. They left us a legacy of curiosity and wonder, a reminder that our quest to understand the universe is as old as civilization itself. Their story, filled with both triumph and tragedy, is a testament to the resilience and ambition of the human spirit, a story that continues to unfold with each passing day as we look up at the same stars that guided our ancestors and wonder what they might reveal about our own journey through the cosmic sea. You crack open your eyes to the sound of the Adriatic Sea whispering against the wooden hull of your ship. You're not waking up to the gentle embrace of memory foam or the soothing tones of a smartphone alarm. Nope, you're in the 15th century, and your morning starts in a cramped wooden bunk surrounded by the unmistakable aromas of salt, sweat, and timber. The quarters are tighter than a miser's purse. It's a space so small it makes a modern-day studio apartment feel like a palace. You're aboard a Croatian vessel, part of a crew navigating the unpredictable Mediterranean waters, and your day is about to kick off with the kind of vigor that only a seafaring life demands. Rolling out of your bunk, you carefully navigate over and around your fellow sailors, doing your best not to land a foot in someone's face. It's a delicate dance, not unlike a game of Twister, minus the fun and colourful mat. Hygiene on the high seas? Let's just say even the concept of a shower is as distant as the moon. Instead, you might get a splash of seawater when you're lucky, which does wonders for the skin, they say, assuming you like the feel of crusty salt as a moisturizer. Your first port of call is the ship's galley, or more accurately, the designated spot where food magic or tragedy, depending on the day, occurs. Breakfast is a modest affair, usually consisting of hardtack, a type of bread that could easily double as a weapon if you ever found yourself in a pinch. Imagine biting into a cracker that laughs at the concept of expiration dates. It's the very definition of endurance food. If you're fortunate, there might be some dried fish to accompany your meal. Protein is essential when you're spending your days hauling ropes and manning sails, after all. But let's face it, the menu isn't exactly Michelin star material. As you chew through your rock-hard breakfast, you can't help but think about the economic cogs turning in the background, dictating every morsel you eat. The ship's provisions are sourced from the cheapest suppliers, often families back in Croatia who are barely scraping by themselves. The cost of feeding a crew is no small burden, and every penny counts. It's a stark reminder that your life at sea is as much about survival as it is about adventure. With your stomach sufficiently fortified, or at least less empty than before, it's time to get to work. Your first task, tending to the sails. It's no small feat. These massive sheets of canvas require the combined effort of the crew to maneuver. You're not just working with your hands, you're working with the elements, and the sea is a fickle mistress. The wind might decide to play nice, or it might throw a tantrum, and it's your job to adapt without a second's hesitation. The sea isn't just a setting, it's a force that shapes your every action. The salty breeze is a constant companion, sometimes a friend, sometimes a foe. It's the kind of relationship that keeps you on your toes, much like the economic pressures that brought you here in the first place. Croatian sailors were part of a vast maritime network, trading goods like salt, timber, and wine. The stakes were high because the profits were crucial not just for the ship's owners, but for the entire local economy back home. Your work is physically demanding, and there's no such thing as an 8-hour workday. The rhythms of your life are dictated by the whims of the sea and the orders of your captain, not by a clock. It's a life that demands resilience, both mental and physical. Yet there's a camaraderie among the crew that eases the burden. Shared hardship has a way of forging bonds that are as strong as the ropes you're tasked with securing. As the morning sun climbs higher, painting the sea with shades of gold, you find a moment to catch your breath. You lean against the railing, gazing out at the vast expanse of water stretching to the horizon. The romantic notion of a sailor's life adventure, freedom, the lure of the unknown, still holds an undeniable charm. But you, more than anyone, know the truth. It's a life of relentless toil, uncertainty, and sacrifice. And yet, for all its challenges, the sea is your home, and it's where you belong. And so, with the sea as both your muse and your taskmaster, you settle into the rhythm of the day. Forget the notion of a tidy desk job with a lunch break and a 5 p.m. exit. Here, your office is the deck, and your hours are dictated by the whims of the wind and the orders barked by the man with the fanciest hat. The captain. This is where we dive deeper into what really makes the ship and its crew tick. Today's main event, hoisting the sails. We're talking about canvas sheets so massive they could moonlight as apartment buildings, if only they were a bit more stationary. Sails are the engines of the sea, and as a 15th century sailor, you're the mechanic and the fuel all rolled into one. It's a team effort, a synchrony of muscle and timing, as you haul ropes and climb riggings with acrobatic grace. One wrong move, and you're not just facing a scolding. You could be overboard faster than you can say, "Man overboard." The ship you're working on is probably a caraca, one of the sturdy, reliable workhorses of the Mediterranean. These vessels aren't just floating planks. They're engineering marvels of their day, capable of withstanding the capricious moods of the sea. With a length of about 25 meters and a beam of around 7 meters, these ships were big enough to carry hefty cargoes and a crew to match. And while it might look romantic to an outsider, it's a rickety roller coaster ride for those who call it home. Speaking of which, let's not forget the economic forces that have you out here, risking life and limb. Your ship is part of a lucrative trade network, a web of commerce stretching from the Adriatic to the far corners of the known world. Croatian sailors like you are the veins through which the lifeblood of medieval trade flows. You're moving products like Dalmatian wine, renowned for its robust flavor, salt, a valuable commodity in preserving food and timber, essential for shipbuilding and construction. The profits from these voyages are a lifeline for the communities back home, and everyone from the ship's captain to the lowliest deckhand is acutely aware of what's at stake. Now, let's talk politics. The seas aren't just a marketplace, they're a geopolitical chessboard, and every voyage is a move in a larger game. Croatia, nestled along the Adriatic, is smack dab in the middle of a tug-of-war between the mighty Ottoman Empire and the Venetian Republic. Each voyage you undertake is more than a commercial venture. It's a maneuver in a high-stakes power struggle for regional dominance. The political landscape is as turbulent as the waters you navigate, and just like those unpredictable waves, alliances and borders can change overnight. On board, social dynamics are a delicate dance. The hierarchy is as rigid as the mast, with the captain at the top, followed by mates, able seamen, and then you, the ordinary sailor. Orders flow downhill, and grumbling about them is about as effective as cursing the rain for being wet. But camaraderie is your lifeline. It's forged in the fires of hard work and mutual reliance, and sometimes in the shared grumbles over a cup of watered-down ale after a grueling day. And speaking of shared moments, let's not ignore the tools of the trade, the navigation instruments of the time. Forget GPS, you've got the sun, the stars, and a compass if you're lucky. The astrolabe and cross staff are your guides, allowing you to measure the angle of the sun or a star over the horizon and calculate your latitude. It's a skill that requires precision and a bit of luck. The modern notion of a carefree sailor exploring the world, more like a skilled mathematician performing calculations in a world where small errors can lead to big disasters. As for ship design, these vessels are equipped with multiple masts and sails, allowing them to harness the wind from various directions. It's all about balance and efficiency, a lesson in physics that even Newton would appreciate. But while the technology of the time is ingenious, it's also unforgiving. There's no room for mistakes, and every piece of equipment, from the rudder to the ropes, has to work in concert to keep the ship and you afloat. Did someone mention adventure? Let's be clear, the romantic notion of the seafaring life as an endless series of swashbuckling escapades is about as accurate as a medieval map. Sure, there are moments of awe as you gaze at the endless horizon or witness a brilliant sunrise at sea. But for each of those moments, there are countless others filled with back-breaking labor, unpredictable weather, and the ever-present threat of pirates, storms, or worse. Yet, despite the hardships, there's an undeniable allure to this life. Perhaps it's the sense of purpose, the knowledge that your journey is part of something larger than yourself. Maybe it's the camaraderie born out of shared struggle, or the quiet satisfaction of a task well done. Or perhaps it's simply the call of the sea, a timeless siren song that has drawn countless souls to its depth throughout history. As the day stretches on, the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the deck. You find a moment to pause, leaning against the ship's railing, the salt air filling your lungs. The sea is vast and mysterious, much like the pages of history itself, full of stories waiting to be told, secrets waiting to be uncovered. And as you gaze out at the horizon, you know that your story, the story of a 15th century Croatian sailor, is just one of many in the grand tapestry of the past. So as you prepare for another night at sea, remember this: the life of a sailor is a testament to human resilience, a dance with danger and destiny. It's a life that demands much, but offers little in return, save for the knowledge that you're part of a tradition as old as civilization itself. And perhaps, in that knowledge, there's a kind of poetry, a gritty, salt-stained beauty that makes it all worthwhile. As the sun dips below the horizon, turning the sea into a canvas of twilight hues, the day's labor finally gives way to the evening's reprieve. This is when your 15th century Croatian sailor life veers from the relentless grind of hoisting sails and dodging the captain's disdainful glare into a realm where camaraderie meets creativity. And what better way to unwind after a day of nautical gymnastics than with a bit of good old-fashioned gambling? Forget poker chips or Vegas glitz. The stakes aboard your ship are more modest, yet they carry their own weight. Games of dice or cards are the evening's entertainment, played with the fervor of a high-stakes tournament. The currency? Anything from the last piece of dried fish to a favor owed, like swapping night watch duties, a hot commodity when sleep is as elusive as a gentle sea breeze. And as the dice clatter across the deck, you can feel the tension as palpable as the sea spray on your face. The seafaring life's constant risk and reward are mirrored in these games of chance, a microcosm of your journey itself. But let's not romanticize it too much. The reality is that gambling's appeal lies not just in the potential gains, but in the temporary escape it offers from the harshness of life at sea. It's a momentary illusion of control in an environment where the only certainty is uncertainty. And while some might think these games are just a way to pass the time, they're also a pressure valve, releasing the built-up steam of monotony and stress. Then there's storytelling, the Netflix of the medieval sailor's world. Gathered around, your crewmates exchange tales that are part history, part fantasy, and all engrossing. These stories serve a dual purpose. They entertain and they educate. You might hear of mythical sea creatures lurking beneath the waves, or the exploits of legendary mariners who defied the odds. Some tales even include a sprinkle of the supernatural, like ghost ships that sail without a crew, eerie echoes of sailors who never returned home. But here's the kicker: these stories aren't just frivolous yarns. They're a way of preserving knowledge, passing down navigation tips or survival strategies wrapped in the allure of adventure. It's history with a twist, a mix of fact and fiction that keeps morale buoyant in the face of the relentless sea. Plus, they give you something to think about other than the blisters on your hands or the grumbling in your stomach. Now, let's address the elephant on the ship: mutiny. Romanticized in countless tales as the ultimate act of defiance, the reality was a bit less glorious. Sure, the idea of overthrowing a tyrannical captain sounds thrilling, but in practice, it's as risky as jumping ship with an anchor tied to your foot. The rigid hierarchy aboard a vessel was as unyielding as the wooden hull itself. The captain's word was law, and challenging it was a gamble few dared to take. The threat of mutiny was always lurking beneath the surface, a shadowy spectre that both the crew and the captain were acutely aware of. The conditions had to be dire: a shortage of food, brutal discipline, or the looming spectre of certain death. But even then, the consequences of a failed mutiny were severe, often ending with a noose or worse. So, While the tales of daring overthrows are tantalizing, the reality was a delicate balance of fear, respect, and the occasional grumble when the captain wasn't within earshot. In the meantime, maintaining morale was a daily tightrope walk. With days often blending into one another, the crew relied on small routines to break the monotony. Singing sea shanties, those rhythmic work songs, wasn't just a way to coordinate tasks, it was a form of communal bonding. The rhythm of the songs matched the rhythm of the work, providing a cadence that made the back-breaking labour slightly more bearable. And let's face it, nothing boosts morale like belting out a tune, even if it's about as in tune as a broken lute. The discipline on board was harsh, with the captain wielding the power to enforce order with an iron hand. Punishments were swift and often brutal, ranging from flogging to confinement in the ship's cramped, stuffy brig. Yet, for all its severity, this discipline was a necessary evil, ensuring the ship operated like a well-oiled machine. The sea was unforgiving, and any lapse in focus or order could lead to disaster. In this floating microcosm of medieval society, the rules were clear, and breaking them came with consequences as severe as the storms you faced. Amidst this backdrop of rigour and routine, the concept of leisure took on a different hue. It wasn't about relaxation, it was about survival of the spirit. The rare moments of respite were cherished, offering a sliver of peace in an otherwise relentless existence. Whether it was a quiet moment watching the stars or a shared joke that cut through the tension like a knife, these small acts of leisure were the glue that held the crew together. And so, as night deepens and the sea rocks the ship into a gentle lull, you find yourself reflecting on the day. The bonds forged in the shared struggles and sparse joys are what make this life bearable. It's a dance with danger, a balance of monotony and peril, where each day is a testament to human endurance and the unyielding pull of the sea. As you drift into a restless sleep, surrounded by the rhythmic creak of the ship and the gentle murmur of the waves, you know that tomorrow will bring more of the same, more challenges, more stories, more dice games under the stars. It's a life that demands everything you have and offers little in return, yet it's a life that's yours. A sailor on the Adriatic, part of a tradition that's as enduring as the sea itself. As the stars blink into existence overhead, you're jolted from your thoughts by the unmistakable call for supper, an event as eagerly anticipated as it is dreaded. Picture this. The evening meal on a 15th century Croatian ship is where culinary creativity meets desperate necessity. If you've ever bemoaned leftovers, try stomachs that have endured weeks at sea, where flavour is often a distant memory and sustenance is the only goal. Your meal tonight is a symphony of survival. It's likely a concoction of salted meat, perhaps beef or pork, having undergone a preservation process that would make modern health inspectors break into a cold sweat. Salt is the hero here, not just a seasoning, but a life-saving preservative. Back in the day, salt was so valuable it was sometimes called white gold, a crucial trade good shipped across the Mediterranean. This isn't your everyday table salt, we're talking about a commodity that could make or break economies, with the power to preserve food and, consequently, lives. Salted meat might be joined by another sailor staple hardtack. Yes, that same jaw-breaking bread you chewed on at breakfast makes a return appearance. It's as if someone took a brick and said, "This should be edible." But throw it in a stew and it softens up, becoming a bit more forgiving on the teeth. If luck is on your side, there might even be some dried legumes in the mix. Pulses are a godsend in these parts, packed with nutrients and easier to store than that fancy kale salad you love. The economic significance of your meal isn't just a historical footnote, it's your daily reality. The food you eat is part of a delicate balance of supply and demand, dictated by the availability of resources back home and the price ship's owners are willing to pay. It's a precarious dance, where every mouthful is a reminder of the razor-thin line between sustenance and starvation. As you chew slowly to avoid cracking a tooth, your thoughts wander to the tales that circulate the ship, stories as much a part of the evening as the meal itself. Pirate attacks, ghost ships, and sea monsters. Oh my! These legends are the Netflix of your time, offering a form of escapism from the confines of wooden walls and endless sea. Take piracy, for instance. The romantic image of swashbuckling rogues, flags fluttering as they commandeer ships, is compelling, but reality paints a grimmer picture. Pirates of the Mediterranean weren't charming anti-heroes. They were often desperate men driven to the edge by poverty or political turmoil, and while the threat they posed was real, the tales of constant pirate attacks were likely exaggerated, a mix of genuine fear and sailors' penchant for embellishment. After all, who doesn't love a good story, especially when it involves danger and daring-do? Speaking of danger, let's not forget the supernatural tales, the ghost ships and sea monsters that haunt your imagination as much as they do the sea itself. These stories serve a dual purpose. They entertain, and they serve as cautionary tales. A ghost ship might represent a vessel lost to the depths, a reminder of the ever-present dangers of the sea. Monsters lurking beneath the waves? They could be the personification of the unknown, a way to make sense of the unpredictable forces that dictate your fate. Such stories aren't just nautical nonsense, they reflect the very real fears and uncertainties that come with life at sea. They're whispered in the dark to ward off the chill of isolation and the endless horizon. They're a way of grappling with the uncontrollable, an anchor in the stormy sea of human emotion. And let's face it, the line between reality and myth is as blurry as the horizon on a foggy night. As supper winds down, the time comes to prepare for the night watch, a task as thankless as it is necessary. The watch is divided into shifts, ensuring the ship remains under constant vigilance. While some crew members take the opportunity to snatch a few hours of sleep, you find yourself pacing the deck, the night air cool against your skin. The purpose of the night watch is straightforward enough. Keep an eye out for obstacles, weather changes, and other ships. But it's also a time for reflection, a solitary vigil where the boundaries between the known and the unknown blur. There's a certain quietude to the night, a chance to connect with the ocean in a way that's impossible during the chaos of the day. Yet, even under the canopy of stars, the spectre of those pirate tales looms large. The Mediterranean was a hotbed of maritime activity, a crossroads of cultures and commerce, and with it came the inevitable clash of interests. Pirates were a constant threat, and the night watch was your first line of defense against potential attacks. It's a sobering duty, one that keeps you on edge, listening for the telltale creak of an approaching vessel. But let's not get too wrapped up in fear. There's something meditative about the night watch too. It's a time to ponder your place in the world, to weigh the risks and rewards of your chosen path. You're not just a cog in the machine of commerce. You're part of a lineage of sailors, each with their own dreams and fears, hopes and regrets. And as you peer out into the inky blackness, you realize that the sea, for all its unpredictability, is a constant, a reminder of the vastness of the world and your small place within it. So, as the night deepens and the ship rocks gently beneath your feet, you find a measure of peace in the routine, in the stories whispered in the dark, and in the knowledge that you're part of something larger than yourself. The myths and legends, the salt and hardtack, the camaraderie and solitude, they're all threads in the tapestry of your life, woven together inextricably with the sea. And with that, your mind drifts back to the tales of pirates and phantoms, to the stories that keep you company as the night stretches on. It's a life that demands much and offers little, but it's a life that's yours. A Croatian sailor on the Adriatic, navigating the waters of history with a keen eye and a steady hand. The sea may be vast and mysterious, but it's your home and it's where you belong. As you stand on the deck, gazing into the abyss of the Adriatic night, the reality of your life as a 15th century Croatian sailor comes into focus like a ship emerging from the mist. It's a life that's far removed from the romanticized tales of freedom and adventure. Those tales are like the sirens of myth, alluring but ultimately misleading. The truth is, your maritime existence is a relentless grind, a balancing act between survival and the slim hope of prosperity. Yet, for all its hardships, your journey holds a significance that echoes far beyond the creaking timbers of your vessel. Let's dive into the economic impact of your seafaring endeavours. Croatian sailors like you are the unsung heroes of a burgeoning medieval trade network that stretches across Europe and beyond. Your ship, a caracca, is more than just a floating workplace, it's a vital cog in the engine of commerce. You're part of a supply chain that delivers essential goods like Dalmatian wine, timber and salt to eager markets. These commodities are the lifeblood of economies, not just in Croatia, but across the continent. They're the reason cities flourish and civilizations advance. Consider this. A single ship's cargo could be worth thousands of ducats, a fortune that sustains not only the ship's owners, but also entire communities back home. Salt, for instance, is a key preservative in a world without refrigeration, making it indispensable. Timber is crucial for construction and shipbuilding, industries that underpin the very framework of society. And let's not forget wine, a staple of medieval life, used in religious ceremonies as much as for casual indulgence. Each voyage you undertake is a high-stakes gamble, with profits that can mean the difference between prosperity and poverty for your fellow countrymen. But the impact of these maritime journeys extends beyond mere commerce. They're a linchpin in the political landscape of 15th century Europe, a time when the sea is a battlefield as much as a trade route. Croatia, with its strategic position along the Adriatic, finds itself sandwiched between mighty powers, the Ottoman Empire to the east and the Venetian Republic to the west. Your voyages are not just about transporting goods, they're maneuvers in a geopolitical chess game. Every successful journey strengthens Croatia's standing, bolstering its economy and fortifying its defences against encroaching empires. The stakes are high and the risks are real. Pirates, storms, and political conflicts threaten your livelihood at every turn. Yet, despite the dangers, there's a sense of purpose in your work. You're not just a sailor, you're a guardian of your homeland's interests, a participant in a grand narrative that shapes the destiny of nations. The sea is vast and unpredictable, but it's also a conduit for cultural exchange and economic growth, a bridge connecting disparate worlds. As you reflect on your place in this complex web, it's clear that the myths surrounding the sailor's life are both a blessing and a curse. They're a blessing because they inspire, they're a curse because they obscure the truth. The romantic image of the swashbuckling rogue, free as the wind, is a captivating tale, but it's as fictional as the sea monsters of legend. The reality is far more nuanced, a testament to human resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Your daily routine may seem monotonous, but it's a microcosm of the larger forces at play. Each task you perform, from hoisting sails to navigating treacherous waters, contributes to a legacy that endures through the ages. You're part of a tradition that has shaped the political and economic landscape of Europe, a tradition that's as integral to history as the rise and fall of empires. So, as you stand on the deck, the salt air filling your lungs, remember this. Your life is a testament to the power of human endeavour, a reminder that even in the harshest conditions, there's a story worth telling. The myths may captivate, but it's the reality, the grit, the toil, the triumph that truly defines the seafaring life. It's a legacy etched in the annals of history, a beacon for future generations navigating the uncertain waters of their own lives. As dawn breaks and the horizon begins to glow with the promise of a new day, you're reminded that the sea, with all its challenges and opportunities, is both a master and a muse. It demands everything from you, yet offers a sense of belonging that transcends the material. You're a sailor, a Croatian voyager on the Adriatic, and your journey is far from over. The sea calls, and you answer, charting a course through the pages of history, one wave at a time. Florence in the 15th century was a place where dreams went to swap their rags for some seriously fancy threads. This Italian city, with its narrow cobblestone streets and Renaissance glow, emerged as the ultimate hotspot for anyone with a paintbrush and a flair for the dramatic. And it wasn't because Florence had the best weather or the tastiest gelato, though the gelato was probably decent. Nope, Florence became the epicenter of the Renaissance because it was absolutely rolling in dough. And by dough, I mean the kind that could fund the likes of Michelangelo and Leonardo, not the kind you bake into ciabatta. Now, why was Florence so flush with cash? Enter the Medici family, a clan that knew a thing or two about banking and had more influence than a modern-day social media mogul with a viral dance video. The Medici, led by the likes of Cosimo and Lorenzo, built a banking empire that stretched its fingers across Europe. By the end of the 14th century, Florence was the Wall Street of its time, except with fewer skyscrapers and more frescoes. The Medici's financial prowess turned Florence into a city where gold florins flowed like wine at a bacchanalia. But let's not give all the credit to the Medici. Florence's strategic location also played a key role in its economic boom. Nestled in Tuscany, Florence was smack in the middle of trade routes that connected it to the rest of Europe and the Mediterranean. This strategic positioning meant that merchants were constantly passing through, and with them came new ideas, exotic goods, and of course, loads of cash. Florence was like the high-speed internet of the Renaissance, a hub for connectivity and exchange. With all this wealth swirling around, Florence became a breeding ground for an artistic revolution. The rich folks of Florence, not content to just sit on their piles of money, decided that they wanted to leave a legacy that would outlast even their finest silk garments. And thus began the era of patronage, a time when wealthy families would essentially say, "Here, take my money and paint something pretty." It was like Kickstarter, but instead of funding tech gadgets, you were funding the creation of masterpieces. These patrons weren't just in it for the art, though. Their support was a strategic power play, a cunning way to showcase their wealth and influence. Commissioning art wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about status. When a family bankrolled a church fresco or a marble statue, they were making a statement as bold as any Twitter feud. They were saying, "Look at me, I'm important, and I have the money to make you immortal." It was the ultimate flex in a time before Instagram. But let's not romanticize the Renaissance too much. While we might picture Florence as a city filled with genius artists, leisurely painting under the Tuscan sun, the reality was a bit more cutthroat. The competition for patronage was fierce, and artists often had to navigate a web of politics and personalities to secure funding. It was a time when your connection to a wealthy patron could make or break your career. So, next time you gaze upon a Botticelli or a Donatello, remember there was probably a whole lot of behind-the-scenes drama that rivaled any modern-day reality show. And let's not forget the less glamorous side of this artistic boom. While the Medici and other wealthy families were lining their walls with art, the average Florentine was dealing with less than ideal living conditions. The streets were crowded, sanitation was questionable at best, and the gap between the rich and poor was as wide as the Arno River. Yet, despite these hardships, or perhaps because of them, the Renaissance thrived. It was this very contrast between opulence and struggle that fueled the creativity and innovation of the era. In essence, the artistic legacy of Renaissance Florence wasn't just about pretty paintings and stunning sculptures. It was about a complex interplay of money, power, and ambition. It was about a city that leveraged its economic might to become a beacon of cultural brilliance. And it was about the individuals, both patrons and artists, who dared to dream big and left a legacy that still dazzles us today. Florence was the stage, the Medici were the producers, and the artists were the stars. Together, they created a show that's been running for centuries, and trust me, the tickets are still worth every penny. In this glittering age of Renaissance Florence, where art was both a lucrative business and a status symbol, two names stand out like neon signs on a dusty old highway: Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. These guys weren't just painters and sculptors. They were the Renaissance equivalent of rock stars, each with their own entourage, drama, and fan base. But let's peel back the romantic myths of the tortured genius, trope that have been slapped onto these legends like overpriced bumper stickers. First up, Leonardo da Vinci. He's often painted, pun intended, as the quintessential Renaissance man, dabbling in everything from anatomy to aerodynamics. But beneath the surface of this seemingly scatterbrained genius was a savvy operator who knew how to market himself better than a modern-day influencer. Leonardo was born in 1452, and by his 20s he was already making waves in Florence with his keen eye for detail and innovative techniques. But here's the kicker. Leonardo was a master of the humble brag centuries before it was cool. He wrote letters to potential patrons detailing his skills in everything from designing bridges to crafting war machines, casually slipping in mentions of his painting prowess. It was like a Renaissance resume, complete with a cover letter that screamed, "Hire me, and I'll make your court the envy of Europe." Leonardo's most famous work, the Mona Lisa, wasn't just a portrait. It was a strategic move to secure his place in the annals of history. Painted in the early 500s, this masterpiece was less about capturing the enigmatic smile of Lisa Gherardini, and more about showcasing Leonardo's talent for capturing the human soul. It was the ultimate business card, a piece that whispered, or perhaps shouted, "I'm the best in the business." And let's not forget his notebooks, filled with sketches and ideas that were as much a showcase of his genius as they were a historical flex. Leonardo's ability to balance artistic innovation with shrewd self-promotion kept him in the good graces of patrons like Ludovico Sforza of Milan, and later King Francis I of France, who practically adopted him in his twilight years. Now, let's turn our gaze to Michelangelo, born in 1475 and destined to become Leonardo's younger, moodier rival. If Leonardo was the suave networker, Michelangelo was the brooding artist whose talent was matched only by his disdain for authority. His work was raw, powerful, and often tinged with a hint of rebellious angst that resonated with the Florentine elite. Michelangelo's rise to fame was cemented with his sculpture of David, a towering 17-foot behemoth carved from a single block of marble. Commissioned in 5001, this statue wasn't just an artistic triumph, it was a colossal middle finger to the establishment, symbolizing the defiance of the Florentine Republic against the more powerful city-states. Michelangelo's talent was undeniable, but so was his knack for playing the art world like a finely tuned violin. He navigated the treacherous waters of patronage with the skill of a seasoned politician, securing commissions from the likes of Pope Julius II, who tasked him with painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And while the image of Michelangelo lying on his back, paintbrush in hand, might evoke romantic notions of artistic suffering, the reality was far more calculated. He demanded and received a lucrative contract, ensuring that his bank account was as robust as his artistic legacy. But let's not get too cynical here. While both Leonardo and Michelangelo were undoubtedly shrewd operators, their work was not devoid of passion or innovation. Leonardo's Last Supper, painted in the late 1490s, revolutionized the use of perspective, while Michelangelo's Pieta, completed in 1499, remains a testament to the power of marble to evoke raw emotion. These works were not just commissions, they were statements, bold declarations of their creators' mastery over their mediums. In essence, the art of the Renaissance was the social media of its day. Each painting, sculpture, and fresco was a post, a status update that reinforced the artist's brand and the patron's prestige. The artists were the influencers, and their wealthy patrons were the brands eager to associate themselves with cultural brilliance. It was a dance of mutual benefit, a symbiotic relationship that propelled both to new heights of fame and fortune. But behind the glamour and the genius was a harsh reality. The competition for commissions was fierce, and the pressure to deliver groundbreaking work was relentless. Leonardo and Michelangelo may have been revered in their time, but they were also burdened by the expectations of their patrons and the ever-present threat of being overshadowed by their contemporaries. It was a world where success was measured not just in talent, but in the ability to navigate the complex web of Renaissance politics and patronage. So, as we admire the masterpieces of these rock stars of the Renaissance, let's remember that their genius was as much a product of their savvy business acumen as it was of their artistic brilliance. They were not just tortured souls, lost in the throes of creative passion, but strategic thinkers who understood the power of art as both a personal expression and a public statement. In the end, their legacy is a testament to the enduring power of creativity to transcend the limitations of its time and leave a mark that continues to awe and inspire. As the Renaissance rolled on, the artists of Florence didn't just rest on their laurels, basking in the glow of their newfound celebrity. Oh no, they were busy cooking up innovations that would send shockwaves through the art world like dropping a Mentos into a bottle of Diet Coke. This wasn't just about painting pretty pictures. It was about redefining how art could capture the human experience and the natural world. Enter the game changers, perspective and chiaroscuro. Let's start with perspective. This was the Renaissance equivalent of inventing 3D glasses. Before this, medieval art was often as flat as a pancake, charming but lacking in depth. Then came Filippo Brunelleschi, a man with a penchant for geometry and a knack for architecture. In the early 1400s, Brunelleschi cracked the code of linear perspective, allowing artists to paint scenes with a convincing illusion of depth. Imagine the difference between a flat, two-dimensional drawing of a house and a full-blown 3D model you can walk around in. That's the leap Brunelleschi made possible. It was like switching from an old-school Nintendo to a virtual reality headset. Brunelleschi's technique was soon picked up by artists like Masaccio, who used it to stunning effect in his fresco, The Holy Trinity, around 1427. This piece wasn't just a religious scene, it was a masterclass in depth and realism, making the viewer feel as if they could step right into the painting. And let's not forget about the vanishing point, the secret sauce that made all this possible. It was a single point on the horizon, where parallel lines appeared to converge, creating a scene that was as immersive as a Hollywood blockbuster. But perspective wasn't just about making art look nice. It was a flex, a way for artists to show off their intellect and technical prowess. In a world where knowledge was power, mastering perspective was like having a PhD in cool. It was a statement that said, "Look at me, I understand the complexities of the universe, and I can paint them with a flourish." Meanwhile, chiaroscuro was shaking things up in its own dramatic way. This technique, which involved using stark contrasts between light and dark, was like the Renaissance's answer to mood lighting. It added a new dimension to art, creating depth and drama that pulled viewers into the scene. Leonardo da Vinci was a maestro of chiaroscuro, using it to give his figures a lifelike presence that seemed to breathe and move within the confines of the canvas. It was the Instagram filter of its time, transforming ordinary subjects into ethereal beings bathed in divine light. By using chiaroscuro, artists could manipulate emotions, casting shadows that gave their work a hauntingly beautiful quality. It wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about capturing the human soul in ways that were both intimate and epic. The technique lent a theatrical flair to portraits and narratives, turning everyday scenes into grand spectacles worthy of an opera. These innovations weren't just about pushing the boundaries of art, they were about outsmarting the competition. In a city where patronage was the name of the game, artists needed every trick in the book to stand out. Perspective and chiaroscuro became weapons in the arsenal of artists vying for lucrative commissions. They were the Renaissance version of cutting-edge technology, drawing attention and admiration like the latest smartphone release. But let's not kid ourselves. These breakthroughs weren't purely altruistic endeavors. They were as much about personal ambition as they were about artistic expression. Each new technique was a notch in the belt of the artist who mastered it, a way to cement their legacy in the annals of history. It was a high-stakes game of one-upmanship, where the prize was not just fortune, but eternal fame. The economic context of Florence played a huge role in this artistic arms race. With money flowing like the Arno River during a spring thaw, the city was a magnet for talent, drawing artists like moths to a flame. Wealthy patrons could afford to invest in the latest artistic innovations, treating art as both a status symbol and a testament to their enlightened taste. In this world, art was more than decoration. It was a currency of power and prestige. The competition was fierce, and the stakes were high. Artists had to constantly innovate to keep pace with the demands of their patrons and the expectations of an ever-evolving art scene. It was a pressure cooker environment, where the next breakthrough was always just around the corner. And let's face it, in a city that was essentially the Silicon Valley of the Renaissance, staying ahead of the curve was crucial. Yet, behind the glamour and the gleaming frescoes, there was a gritty reality that artists had to grapple with. The pursuit of innovation was not without its costs. The pressure to deliver groundbreaking work could be crushing, and the fear of being eclipsed by a rival was ever present. It was a world where success was measured not just in talent, but in the ability to navigate a complex web of politics, patronage, and personal ambition. As we delve into the technical innovations of Renaissance Florence, it's clear that this wasn't just an age of artistic enlightenment. It was a period marked by a relentless drive to push boundaries and redefine what art could be. Perspective and chiaroscuro were more than just techniques. They were symbols of a broader cultural transformation, a shift towards a world that valued knowledge, creativity, and the power of the individual to shape their destiny. In the end, the legacy of these innovations is a testament to the enduring power of human ingenuity. They remind us that art is not just a reflection of the world, but a tool to change it. And as we look back at the masterpieces of the Renaissance, we see not just the genius of individual artists, but the collective ambition of a society striving to reach new heights of cultural achievement. It's a story of triumph and struggle, of passion and pragmatism, and it continues to inspire us to this day. So, next time you gaze upon a Renaissance painting, remember that you're looking at more than just a piece of art. You're witnessing the echoes of a revolution that reshaped the world. In this grand tapestry of Renaissance brilliance, it's tempting to imagine artists as solitary figures, toiling away in candlelit studios, reveling in their creative genius. But let's pause on that romantic notion and zoom in a little closer. What if I told you the art world of Renaissance Florence was more like a bustling startup than an isolated genius's sanctuary? Welcome to the workshops and apprenticeships, the art factories of the 15th century. Picture this. Bustling studios filled with the clamour of voices, the clinking of tools, and the ever-present scent of oil paint and plaster. These were the real engines of artistic creation, where a hodgepodge of apprentices, journeymen, and master artists worked together in a choreographed dance of creativity and commerce. Forget the myth of the lone genius. Art was a team sport, and these workshops were the arenas where the magic happened. Take the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio, a name that might not ring as many bells as Leonardo or Michelangelo, but deserves a standing ovation nonetheless. Born in 1435, Verrocchio was a master sculptor and painter who ran one of the most prestigious workshops in Florence. His studio was a veritable incubator of talent, nurturing the skills of young artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Sandro Botticelli, and Pietro Perugino. It was like having Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and Mark Zuckerberg all interning at the same startup before going on to change the world. Verrocchio's workshop operated with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Young apprentices, often starting as young as 10 or 12, were the lifeblood of the operation. They were the ones mixing pigments, preparing canvases, and, in today's terms, grinding it out in the art world trenches. Apprenticeships lasted around 5 to 7 years, a rigorous boot camp where they learned everything from basic drawing to the intricacies of fresco and sculpture. It was a hands-on education that would put modern-day art schools to shame. Once they completed their training, these apprentices would become journeymen, allowed to take on smaller commissions and assist on larger projects. It was the art world equivalent of climbing the corporate ladder, with the ultimate goal of becoming a master artist and opening their own workshop. But make no mistake, only a handful would reach the pinnacle of renown. Most would toil in relative obscurity, contributing to the masterpieces that bore another's signature. Now, let's debunk the myth of the solitary genius a little further. Ever heard of the Sistine Chapel ceiling? Of course you have. Michelangelo's magnum opus, painted between 1508 and 1512, is often depicted as a solitary labour of love. But in reality, Michelangelo had a whole team of assistants, artists who helped with mixing pigments, preparing the plaster, and even painting portions of the less critical sections. While Michelangelo did the heavy lifting in terms of design and execution, he wasn't above delegating some of the grunt work. It was art by committee, and the result was nothing short of spectacular. And let's not forget the economic context that made these workshops thrive. Florence was a city awash with wealth, and the demand for art was insatiable. Wealthy patrons were eager to commission pieces that showcased not just the skill of the artist, but their own refined taste and status. Art was a currency, a way to secure social capital and leave a lasting legacy. In this climate, workshops were the perfect business model, churning out high-quality art at a pace that would satisfy even the most demanding patrons. But with all this collaboration, where did the myth of the solitary genius come from? Part of it is simply good storytelling. The idea of a lone artist, battling inner demons and external pressures to create something transcendent, is undeniably romantic. It appeals to our sense of individualism and the notion that one person can change the world. But the reality is far more complex and, dare I say, more interesting. Behind every masterpiece was a network of artists, craftsmen, and patrons, each playing a crucial role in its creation. It was a symbiotic relationship where everyone had skin in the game. The master artist might have been the face of the operation, but it was the collective effort of all involved that brought the vision to life. It was the Renaissance version of a collaborative startup, where innovation thrived not because of a singular vision, but through the melding of many talents. And yet, for all their collaboration, these artists and workshops still had to navigate a landscape fraught with competition. With so much at stake, securing a commission was like winning the lottery. Artists had to be savvy negotiators, skilled networkers, and, at times, cunning rivals. Alliances were formed and broken, and the art world was as much about politics as it was about painting. Take the case of Ghirlandaio, another lesser-known but critically important figure. Born Domenico di Tommaso Bigordi in 1448, Ghirlandaio was a prolific painter whose workshop rivaled Verrocchio's in its output and influence. It was here that a young Michelangelo would cut his teeth, learning the craft under Ghirlandaio's watchful eye. Ghirlandaio's workshop was renowned for its efficiency and ability to handle large-scale fresco commissions, much like a Renaissance assembly line. Each member of the workshop had a role, from sketching initial designs to applying the final touches. In this world, art was not just an expression but a business, one that required the same strategic thinking and resourcefulness we associate with modern enterprises. It's a reminder that behind every great artist was a team of unsung heroes, each contributing their skills to the final product. They were the silent partners in the creation of art, their hands shaping the works that would carry the names of master artists into eternity. So next time you stand before a Renaissance masterpiece, take a moment to appreciate not just the genius of the artist whose name graces the plaque, but the collective effort of all those who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. It's a testament to the power of collaboration, a reminder that even the greatest achievements are often the result of many minds working together. In the end, the story of Renaissance Florence is not just about individual brilliance, but about the complex interplay of talent, ambition, and opportunity. It's a tale of innovation and collaboration, of art as both a personal expression and a societal endeavour. And as we continue our journey through this remarkable era, let's keep our eyes open to the lesser-known figures who played their parts with skill and dedication, leaving their mark on a world that still resonates with their creativity. And speaking of Florence's artistic ecosystem, let's talk about how this Renaissance frenzy didn't just leave behind a bunch of dusty old paintings and sculptures for us to gawk at in museums. Oh no, it was the blueprint for the art world as we know it today. Imagine a world where artists like Leonardo and Michelangelo are the godfathers of branding, their works the original viral content. Because that's exactly what happened. Renaissance Florence was the seedbed where the modern concept of branding took root, and it was a wild ride. You see, back in the day, an artist's name wasn't just a signature on the bottom corner of a canvas. It was a brand, a promise of quality, creativity, and innovation. The Medici, with their deep wallets and even deeper influence, understood this better than anyone. They weren't just commissioning art, they were creating cultural capital, investing in human ingenuity as one might invest in a tech startup today. By backing artists who were pushing the boundaries of what art could be, they were effectively saying, this is where the future is headed, and we're steering the ship. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci were the Steve Jobs of their era, crafting not just works of art, but entire personas. Leonardo was known for his boundless curiosity and multifaceted talents, which he meticulously documented in his notebooks. These weren't just sketches, they were marketing materials, showcasing his genius to potential patrons. His reputation was as carefully curated as any modern Instagram influencer's feed. And speaking of influence, let's not ignore how these Renaissance artists made art not just something you looked at, but something you experienced. With perspective and chiaroscuro, they turned flat surfaces into immersive worlds, a move that echoes through to today's virtual reality and digital art landscapes. The Renaissance didn't just change how art looked, it changed how art felt, creating a deeper engagement that resonates with modern audiences used to multimedia experiences. But let's not gloss over the gritty realities that came with this artistic evolution. For every artist who became a household name, there were countless others who toiled in obscurity, their contributions swallowed by the shadows of their more famous contemporaries. This wasn't just about talent, it was about who you knew, how well you navigated the social and political minefields, and, sometimes, pure luck. The art world was as much about networking as it was about painting, a reality that's as true today as it was in the 15th century. Today, we might not have patrons like the Medici doling out ducats for frescoes, but the concept of art as a vehicle for personal and political expression remains. The methods may have changed, canvas and marble replaced by digital screens and interactive installations, but the core idea of art as a statement, a conversation starter, is eternal. Modern artists like Banksy and Ai Weiwei are the spiritual descendants of those Renaissance trailblazers, using their work to comment on society and influence public discourse. And while we're on the subject of influence, let's talk about the myth of the tortured genius, that romanticized notion of the artist suffering for their craft, which really took off during the Renaissance. Michelangelo, for instance, was known for his tempestuous personality and disdain for authority, a real-life drama that added layers to his legend. But here's the kicker. A lot of this tortured genius stuff was spun posthumously to add mystique to their achievements. In reality, these artists were savvy operators who knew how to work the system to their advantage. They were as much entrepreneurs as they were visionaries, balancing creative passion with the cold, hard realities of making a living. In fact, the Renaissance set the stage for a more democratized art world, where art could be a profession, not just a pursuit for the wealthy or the clergy. This shift laid the groundwork for the modern art market, where a piece by a hot new artist can fetch millions, and a single painting can make or break a gallery's reputation. The economic forces that once fueled Florence's artistic explosion continue to drive the art world today, albeit with new players and technologies in the mix. But as much as we like to romanticize the Renaissance as a golden age of creativity, let's not forget it was also a time of fierce competition, where the pressure to innovate could be relentless. Artists were constantly pushing boundaries, not just for the sake of art, but to secure their livelihoods. It was a high-stakes game where reputation was everything, and a single misstep could cost dearly. So, what's the takeaway from all this Renaissance revelry? Well, it's a reminder that art is as much about the artist as it is about the audience. It's a two-way street, a dialogue between creator and consumer that transcends time and space. The myths and realities of Renaissance Florence continue to shape our understanding of creativity and innovation, teaching us that art is not just about beauty, but about challenging norms, sparking conversations, and imagining new possibilities. As we wrap up our journey through the artistic legacy of Florence, let's appreciate the complexity of this era. Not just the masterpieces it produced, but the intricate tapestry of ambition, commerce, and creativity that wove it all together. It's a story of human endeavor at its most dazzling and most daring, a testament to the power of art to capture the imagination and transform the world. So, the next time you find yourself entranced by a painting or sculpture, remember the bustling workshops, the savvy patrons, the strategic networking, and the relentless innovation that got us here. The Renaissance may be centuries behind us, but its echoes still resound in every brush stroke, every pixel, and every note of the art that surrounds us today.